Good evening. It is 6 o'clock and I call this regularly scheduled Dunwoody City Council meeting on February 22nd at 6 p.m. to order. Unless there's an objection, seeing none, the meeting is called to order. Ginger, oh, never mind, I found him. Okay. I was missing council person seconder who is participating virtually, but now I see him on my screen, the miracle of technology. With that, Councilman Hennigan, can you lead us in the invocation and the pledge, please?
Please rise if you're able. At this meeting, help us to make decisions which keep us faithful to our mission and reflect our values. Give us strength to hold to our purpose, wisdom to guide us, and a keen perception to lead us. And above all, keep us charitable as we deliberate.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to begin tonight with reports under public comments. Brittany, are there any public comment cards? No. Ginger, can you check online, please?
If you would like to speak in public comment, please raise your hand in the Zoom application. I see Brandon Haas, and I very much apologize if I said your name incorrectly, but you should be able to unmute and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I apologize, but I'm unable to see us live, the public live. This happened last meeting as well. Is the public fully engaged this time?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question. Apologies, Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I also see Dennis Shortle, and you should be able to unmute and speak, sir. You have 3 minutes.
Is it my turn to start?
Go ahead, Mayor Shortle. We are here and we can hear you. Just speak up.
Okay. First of all, thank you to each and every one of you for representing the citizens of this city. I compliment you on a couple things. Number one, extending the paving contract for another year with Blunt. Good price, great quality. I mentioned, I saw, I think 4 of you, maybe 5 at the opening of the spring baseball season on Saturday about the perimeter center situation there with 84 perimeter center. Yeah, I read that over what they're asking for, and you know, it looks to me like, you know, they're kind of rewriting our code. And I just, my only comment here is strictly this, you know, we represent the cities and the businesses of this, excuse me, the citizens and the businesses of this city. And, you know, the financial interest is always important, but it's not as important as the interests of our citizens. And I think I just ask all of you to take a good hard look at what they're asking for. And is that really why we became a city? Or is it some other reason, you know, that you're looking at? Maybe things that I haven't had a discussion with you because I don't consider that legal anyway. But anyway, please take a good hard look at everything they're asking for. And Tom, I compliment you on bringing up a lot of good points at the last meeting. So all of you take a hard look at what they're asking for and make that decision after you take that hard look and make sure you have all the inputs from both sides. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. Eric, good to see you. Thanks for all of you for everything you do. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
If anyone else would like to speak in public comment, please raise your hand in the Zoom application. I see no more hands raised at this time.
Okay, so that concludes public comment, and we will have another session at the end of the meeting. if anyone would like to speak then. Our next presenter is ready to go. Yes, okay, sorry, we were having some technical problems. And now we're not. So I'd like to introduce Anna Hill. Ginger, can you put her on the screen, please? Hi, Anna. Anna Hill was elected DeKalb County School Board member for District 1, which is all of Dunwoody, some of Chamberley, Brookhaven, a little bit over towards Tucker and Lakeside High School, and Doraville, some of Doraville. In July, but her term began in January. She has been a school board member for 6 weeks, and we know that she is new to the board, and you're still developing relationships, and you're just one of 7, but you know, and your job is to set policy, but we are interested in hearing from you tonight, and I think council has some questions for you. So I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? I just want to make sure. Well, it's nice to be here. I appreciate you all inviting me. I have spoken with a few of you and look forward to speaking with more of you in the future. Obviously, it's easier when we're not dealing with COVID, but I'm happy to do a Zoom or phone call or whatever. Thank you for the introduction. I know that a lot of you want to know about face-to-face versus virtual and all of that. So let's just acknowledge the elephant in the middle of the living room, get that knocked out. As you guys may or may not know, this is the decision of the superintendent. This is not a decision that the board makes. Having said that, it's really important for me to hear what everyone has to say, which I have shared with the superintendent. And just to be upfront, my personal opinion is that we should go back, students should be back in school. However, I will be honest and tell you that I've had probably 60-40 wanting to go back versus not wanting to go back in my inbox. The emails are from the entire county as a whole. I think in District 1, there are more that want to go back than don't, but it is not 100% one way or the other. So I want you to understand that I hear what you're saying and I'm listening, and I share all of this with the superintendent when I speak with her. So happy to answer any questions about that. That may answer everything, but I did want to acknowledge that first, because as much as you guys care about what my next 4 years are about, I think that you probably care more, many care more about what's going to happen, you know, with virtual learning or not. So there is that. Many of you know that my background as a professional, I'm a CPA, so obviously numbers matter to me. The district has had struggles with their audit results for many years. This isn't to badmouth DeKalb County. It is the truth. It's all public record. And it is something that I'm very excited that we have a new CFO, Mr. Burbridge, and he is working on fixing the problem. And when you ask what the problem is, there is a material weakness in internal control. And what that means is corrective action is committed to by the district, and the corrective action, once completed, should resolve this issue. I will tell you that the same corrective action has been in place since 2013. And I'm not sure what did or didn't happen in the past, but I can tell you as of today, Mr. Burbridge in the last board meeting explained what his plans were to finally fix the corrective action, get that taken care of. And I'm very excited about that. The other big issue that we have is the comprehensive master plan. As we all know, overcrowding is a really big problem. And before the district can, you know, not just District 1, but before DeKalb County School District can fix the problem, they need to determine, you know, what is the status of the buildings? What does the community feel? How many students? What is the demographic growth expected to be? So I'm here today to ask all of you, if you can please be sure to go on the DeKalbSchools.ga website. There's a survey that everyone can fill out, not only if you have a student in the school, but if you're a stakeholder, which is all of us. Please go on and take 10 minutes and fill out the survey online. It's really, really helpful. You know, there's so much going on with COVID, and are we going to go back? Are we not? Which is understandable. What I don't want to happen is we emerge and all of a sudden they say, well, gosh, we didn't really get a lot of input from the community. This is our chance to speak up about how we feel. So those are the things that are on my mind today, and I'm happy to answer whatever questions you guys have. And I want to encourage everyone to please reach out to me. My email address is anna_hill@DeKalbSchoolsGA.gov.
Okay. I'm going to expect that some council people have questions. And so you want to start on Tom's end? Start on Tom's end.
Hey, Anna, thanks for being here tonight. I don't necessarily have a question. It's more of a comment in the hopes that you will relay these feelings to those in charge and making decisions. It's no mystery that we have an overcrowding issue here in Dunwoody in particular. This is not something new. I've been heavily involved with schools for nearly 2 decades. And this has been a problem my entire time involved with the schools. So, and I'm afraid that, although these conditions have never been acceptable, in my opinion, they've been exacerbated by the pandemic. And I make that statement because, when I look at some of the reasons why schools cannot return, building readiness is on the list. Excuse me, I'm just switching masks here. A lot easier to breathe in this one. Building readiness is there. I think 12 months is more than enough time to get buildings ready. I think part of the problem is our buildings were in such bad shape to begin with, especially with the overcrowding, that there might be issues there that they can't address properly. And so I bring this point up because we're doing the comprehensive master plan. And it's my hope that, I've been through a couple plans with the district, and there's always optimism and there's always hope. And then it seems that nothing ever really gets done for them. And it's my hope that that we will have an actionable plan that comes out of this time. We have brand new leadership in the district, and it's my hope that they will take this with the seriousness that it deserves. Our new COO is no stranger to the issues I'm talking about. Noel Maloof was a principal for both Vanderlyn and Dunwoody High School, so he knows exactly what we're talking about and what we're dealing with here. And I just hope that this process is more than a process. That I'm hoping that it is taken seriously, that we have some actionable items that come out of this, and then most important, the district takes action on those and takes the necessary and sometimes very difficult and hard steps to address the issues that we've been trying to get addressed for way too long. But Anna, thank you so much. I look forward to working with you on issues related to the community and the schools, and I wish you the best of luck on the job. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. One thing I wanted to mention also is I'm looking it up right now to see what time it starts. On Thursday of this week, there is an update from the district. There's a CMP town hall meeting. It's from 6 to 7:30. And if you go on the DeKalb website, DeKalb Schools website, you can find a link to it. Also, there are updates every 2 weeks about the status of the comprehensive master plan, which are helpful as well. It's kind of hard sometimes to know what's going on, but I read those updates and you might want to look at those from time to time as well. But I heard what you said. You have optimism and hope, but you also want actionable items. And I'm going to be sure to keep that in mind. So thank you.
Jim?
Good evening, Anna. Thanks for coming out with us. Second on, getting back to school. I mean, I think all of us want the kids to have a face-to-face option. And I'm hopeful some of the maybe back channel rumors we've heard on that may come to fruition this week. And I'll just leave it at that. We've already covered it. I second Tom's comments about the overcrowding. That has been the ongoing big issue in Dunwoody for some time, as I'm sure you're painfully aware. I'm going to just offer one additional anecdote. At one of the meetings that we've had over the last couple of years on that, I had a parent come to me who spent a good bit of his time in elementary school in trailers in Dunwoody, and now he's got a kid in trailers in Dunwoody. So the point to this is no longer just a decadal problem. This is a multi-generational problem at this point. It's just a huge failure on the part of DeKalb County schools, and it needs to get fixed. It really needs to get fixed for the kids of this county. So, and thanks for what you're doing, and Godspeed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you sharing that anecdote. That's really a shame and not okay. And I completely agree. This needs to change.
Hey, Anna. Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. And again, many, many thanks for representing us on the school board. I think when we first met, I told you they, in my opinion, a school board elected official is the most important elected position anyone can hold. And it can also be the worst. So thank you. Thank you. There's not enough thank yous that go to all the school board members. And I really appreciate you doing this. I just had a quick question. I agree, I won't rehash what these two gentlemen have already said. I agree with them. But a quick question tomorrow night with the drive-in celebration, I believe it's called. Is that going to be televised on the DeKalb County website, Facebook Live? Is that going to be accessible to people that cannot drive there?
It will be. I had that question myself and I checked with the superintendent today and they plan to stream it like normal, both through the website and then also, I think it's channel 24 on Comcast.
Yes.
I will not be there in person in a car because I had something else planned and I didn't find out about it myself until last week, but it is a state of the region and a state of the district, the county as a whole. And just to let you guys know, I was asked to do recording to be shown. All of the board members have done that. And it was a lot of fun for me. It was just 1 minute and we were supposed to thank all of these people. And I started off thanking the students because this has been the hardest on them. We're adults, the teachers, it's been hard on them. It's been hard on the staff and everyone else. But I really wanted to focus on the fact that this was something that we really needed to acknowledge the students for. So I look forward to seeing the broadcast myself.
Great, thank you. And I look forward to working with you on many initiatives coming up. Thanks.
Councilman Seconder, I don't know if you have anything and at the moment.
Sure, yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Hey, thanks for joining, Anna. Jumping in the fire. Welcome to 2021. I'm a big person as well as accountability and oversight. And I just really, I appreciate the folks that educate Dunwoody and those folks that are active of looking at how the system works and how the auditability and accountability is going on. So like these waivers that we're getting from the State Board of Education, right? Granted by this the strategic waiver school system. I heard it's up for renewal in 2021. And then yet you hear about the Georgia Department of Education saying, well, it's not really State Board of Education, it's coming from the Georgia Department of Education on those waivers, So we see all these waivers happening for allowing overcrowding of schools or whether it's academic standards and so on. I just want to keep, the idea is that we should have all the same standards across the state and it should be held accountable. So if there's any way, obviously speaking to the choir here, that we can really take that up another notch to make sure that if they're applying for a new waiver, is that really vetted in the public, really well vetted, what those waivers are, how the public can have input before those waivers are approved, right? And a hook in and tie it, whether it goes, we have to talk to the State Department of Education or the State Board of Education. I'd really love to see that, Anna, right? Okay. And then I've heard that also, it's been a really trying year for those stay-at-home parents that have special needs, parents with special needs children, really, really tough. I've heard some really sad stories and I empathize. It's so tough. I'd like to really know how the school system is doing, taking extra steps to help those special needs children that are at home still, that need that extra TLC. And the last point, again, sticking back to that transparency is all about the CARES Act. And we're very transparent here at the city. Want to see ensure that how's the school district spending those CARES Act funds? And do they have an open checkbook? Is it right there, easy to see how they're spending it, what they're spending it on? So those would be my items there, Anna, and welcome. Thank you for jumping in.
Thank you. I appreciate the questions. I was taking notes while we're talking. I just want to make sure that I understand and have noted properly your questions and comments. You wanted to know about the Swiss waivers, and there's a renewal in 2021. And your concern, which is a really good one, how is that vetted? How is the public made aware of it? What is the transparency with that process? And then the second thing you wanted to know about, which is I have a soft spot for as well, because of my family situation, is what has been done to be sure that the special needs students, the exceptional education students, have been taken care of. And then the third thing is wanting to make sure for the CARES funding and spending, what does it spend on? Is it an open checkbook? What's going where? And transparency related to that. And I think those are really good issues. And I'm not going to pretend I have the answers, but I can commit to finding out and having an ongoing discussion. And that's what I like about these things. I can't be everywhere and think of all of the things. So hearing from you guys what's on your mind is really important. And that's why I'm grateful for this. And I do commit to getting back to everyone on these 3 issues. Thank you.
Stacy.
Hi, Anna. Again, thanks for making time. Appreciate it, and welcome to public service. My first question is kind of, I hope, an easy one, and one that maybe you can say publicly. Is DeKalb County School System committed to having an in-person graduation for the class of 2021?
The superintendent is the one who makes that decision, and I don't know that she's made that yet. That is not a board decision.
Then I would offer my opinion that we need to be committed to having an in-person graduation for the class of 2021. As someone who got to watch her son graduate on a computer, actually 2 of us up here watched our kids graduate on a computer. It's not the same. And DeKalb County would be doing a huge disservice to yet another class to not have an in-person graduation.
They've actually announced that there is going to be graduations.
I want to make sure that they're not going to change their minds.
Well, that's right. But they've announced, and the media reported it wrong, and they correct it. So I think they're pretty committed now.
Have they corrected it?
Yeah, they corrected it.
Thank you, Lynn.
And my next question is just, and I just can't find this information out there, and perhaps it's not because they don't have a plan yet. What is the reopening plan? How are schools going to look once students are allowed to walk through the doors?
Let me unmute here. The best thing to do related to the reopening plan, and I'm here on the DeKalbSchoolsGA.org website. There's on the bottom left, there's a button called School Reopening. And then there's about 10 different areas, announcements, tracking, IEP and 504, staggered schedule, remote learning. I'm not going to read them all, FAQ, wellness, nutrition, all of that. If you look on that and you don't find the information that you need, please send me an email and then I can find out.
And then I guess I'm just going to piggyback on Joe's questions and to answer, no, I don't believe that DeKalb County is serving kids with individual education plans. There's no way they possibly can when doing it virtually. So I do think that is a huge concern in our community and all across the county. And I, again, also to repeat what Joe said, how is DeKalb County spending the CARES Act money, and how are you translating and communicating that to the public? Because that's a lot of money, and we have a lot of questions about building readiness, and having that transparent is going to be very important. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I want to make sure I had a note of that as well. And, you know, the issue with the special ed, the IEP and 504, I actually pulled my son's IEP out, and I'm sharing this with his permission. He's 20 now, so I have to be, you know, respectful of that. But some of his accommodations were actually not possible in a remote environment, to your point. As badly as a teacher and a student would have wanted to have followed what the accommodations were, you can't, you know, do certain things if you're not there in person. So I completely understand what you're saying. And this is why I brought this up in the January board meeting as well, to make sure that we're having this conversation. If you want to do something, but you're not able to, what's happening instead? And I think that's really important. I worry a lot about these students. I worry about all of the students, but you know, if you have a working IEP and 504 and you can't actually follow what it says, it leaves a situation of difficulty.
John.
Anna, thank you for joining us this evening and for your entry into public service to help guide our community. I know that you've just joined the school board and that the board sets policy while the day-to-day operations are handled by the superintendent. I trust that you are just getting up to speed on all issues and that you will help shape schoolhouse policy moving forward. The relationship between governments and ourselves is a social contract of the citizens believing that the government is there to provide beneficial long-term change to the society in which we live and to also sustain our way of life. Governmental entities provide a collective service for all the people in exchange for the citizens providing the funds to make that happen. For the last year, this pandemic has caused turmoil in all segments of our society and our economy. Yet essential services have continued to be provided to those with the greatest need. The DeKalb County school system has adapted by only offering virtual education, which neither meets many of the citizens' definition of providing beneficial long-term change to our children, nor because of the stresses it places upon our families does it sustain our expected way of life. Citizens believing that the social contract not being honored by the DeKalb County school system have been reaching out to elected officials and to school system asking for change. But unfortunately, to date, there is no real plan to return to the classroom. Some citizens who have the ability to remedy the situation on their own by moving to a private school or by moving away from our community are now doing so. Citizens whose children are being failed by DeKalb, who cannot take matters into their own hands, continue to do everything they can to assist with their children's education, but they have no option but to take what limited services the system is providing them. And honestly, for many, many kids, it's not enough. Ms. Hill, the only elected official with the power to affect change for our children is you. Now is the time to modify the policies of the school system in order to have our children return to the classroom. To do anything else is to continue to fail our community. I really do thank you for coming tonight, and I really do wish you very well in the important job you have in front of you. And again, thank you for the service. I know it's not an easy job, but I'm hoping for improvements for the betterment of all of our citizens in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the warm welcome. And you're right, this isn't easy, but if it was, everybody would do it.
All right, me. Anna, again, I want to thank you for coming, and I hope we can make this a regular occasion. A year ago, the biggest challenge facing most Dunwoody parents were related to facilities. And to Tom's point and others, we absolutely cannot drop the ball on that. We are getting a new elementary school, which I've shared with you. I think is in some ways putting a square peg in a round hole. I think the space is too small, and I'd like to see the school system do something about that. I think there's some opportunity there to perhaps expand the property or shrink the footprint of the school. And then with the CMP planning process going on, I have shared with DeKalb several times that it's important that mayors and community development directors be a part of the process. I don't know exactly their timeline. Do you know, Anna, the timeline they are going to be completed with their report? Do you have an idea?
Well, there are multiple reports that are happening. There are 2 reports now that I think they're going to be finished by the end of February. Mm-hmm. It's a demographic report, and then the other one is a facilities report. If you go on the Comprehensive Master Plan website, you can look at the timeline. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I have to alert you and tell you that it says they're completed, but as of today, they're not completed. So I guess the good news is they haven't finished yet. Okay. I've heard what you've said though, and I am doing a mini session soon, and I will ask those questions. And to the extent that any of you all want me to find something out or bring something to their attention, you know, my job and role is to listen to the community and, you know, bring things to their attention that they need to be made aware of. So please do reach out. And trust me, you will not be blown up my inbox. It is way too late for that.
Right. We know. We get that. So my concern is that there's growth that local governments know about that needs to be reflected in the plan, or we fail from the get-go. And so I'd appreciate you putting that bug in their ear again. And then on the issue of returning children to buildings for in-person learning, at the 30,000 foot view, I'm really concerned that we're a year into this and there are reports that some buildings aren't ready. I think we need to get we need to give families the option. I also think that the school system should have come up with plans that were somewhat outside the box. There was no need for us, given the amount of time we've had, to simply replicate what other school systems are doing. Our needs are unique, and our situation is probably different because of the age and status of some of our facilities. And if I was the superintendent or the school board, I would like an audit of how people's time was spent. I mean, that's probably seems a little in the weeds for the school board, but, you know, along with how the CARES Act money was spent, what exactly were people doing? So when I had conversations with Ramona Tyson, who was I guess they named her superintendent in this late spring, from the meetings I was going to, I picked up the telephone and I called her and I said, these are the things that I'm hearing that you ought to be thinking about to get school back in person. And simply put, the system was totally stressed by just finishing the school year. But I'm concerned that we finished the school year and then maybe went into, I just don't know what happened. And there is a history here that can explain to some extent why things are harder in DeKalb. And it is genuinely harder in DeKalb. The history isn't pretty, but it is storied. So that we started at a huge disadvantage to almost every school system in the state with the age and the condition of our buildings. But we knew that in May, we knew that in March. And so I'm really concerned with how the CARES Act money was spent. You know, I'd like you to, you know, we're hearing a variety of things about cleaning supplies at schools. I'd like you to do, you know, we talk about audits. We do a lot of audits, but part of our audits is also looking at the end of projects and making sure the funds were spent the way they were supposed to. DeKalb has a long history of not adequately supplying the schools. Is that because of incompetency or something else? You know, why do schools consistently not have soap? Why do they consistently not have paper towels? And then in light of the pandemic, what resources were ordered and were they delivered and were they distributed? And I think as we leave this time, and we will, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, the data is looking extremely promising. We need to do, as we move forward towards the plan that the CMP plan puts forward, I would really like to see the school system also do a deep dive in how we got here, not where we are today, but where we were in March and where we are today. But because I think as a voter and a taxpayer who's going to be asked to approve another SPLOST and potentially a bond, which for the school system, I think we need to understand how it is that 25 years or so into SPLOST spending, we still have buildings that are in dismal shape. And I think we need to understand how we get out of where we are. We need to understand how we got here. And I think, you know, I was on a citizens commission more than a decade ago to close small schools in DeKalb. And it was a really brutal experience, but it was, right, but it was a really hard experience because you never want to take resources away from a community. But we have a lot of talent in DeKalb County. And I think we need to, while moving forward, understand how it is that our buildings are in such worse disrepair than other places. Even like I said, after 20 something years in SPLOST. And I think the numbers, I haven't looked at the numbers today, but as someone who has been in COVID as much as any non-scientist person in the area, the data looks really promising and every indicator is good, and we can't keep moving the goalpost. The school system is causing tremendous stress to families who want a choice. You know, I've said it before to you and to others that for families who want their children to remain at home, they know what the rest of the school year looks like. They're going to stay virtual. It's the families of special need kids and others who want their children to have an opportunity to go back in the schools. And we had goalposts. We had goalposts that changed in December. And now we've met those goalposts and there hasn't been an announcement made. I'd like to think one is coming, but additionally, and you know, we have a lot of examples out there of where things are working, and I hope we can replicate them. And with that, unless anybody has any other questions, we wish you much luck, and we're hoping for information soon. And thank you for coming, Anna.
Thank you. I appreciate it. One quick thing I wanted to also mention is that DeKalb County Schools are now summarizing every board meeting on the website, which is great. I don't know if you've noticed, they can be a little long, the meetings. So I just wanted to mention that, which I meant to say earlier in my little intro. And if you can't find it, the way that you get to it is you go to the school district website and go to the news stories, which is on the right side, and it's called Board of Education Download. And that's really helpful. It's a summary of everything in the meeting.
And I am remiss if I don't ask you what we can do for you.
Oh,
the
thank
City
you.
Council.
Oh, I appreciate that. You know, communicating with me, of course, is great. I would love to have the opportunity to talk to the others that I haven't yet one-on-one, and then have more conversations. To the extent that you have any community outreach and you could request that people fill out the comprehensive master plan survey, that is not just for people who are parents, that is for everyone in the community, the taxpayers. Please fill that out. That's really helpful. And then, you know, I can't read minds. So if there's something on your mind, please let me know, because that's what I'm here for. So thanks for inviting me today. I appreciate it, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Next up, Michael Smith, are you gonna, or are we just going to have, is Michael here? Oh, he's here. Okay. We're gonna have an update on the 285 Vantage Lane project.
Yes.
From Georgia DOT.
Tim Matthews is here from DOT, and he has a little short presentation and then take questions on the Managed Lane project.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Michael. Mayor, council members, a pleasure to be here this evening. And trust me when I say it's a pleasure to be here with you to give you an update on the 285 Express Lane project that's within the MMIP program. Give me a second while I share my screen, okay? Okay, hopefully you guys can see that. Okay. So again, pleasure to be here, and listening to that last speaker, the board member, I thought my job was hard. You know, I can see that there's plenty of challenges that we all face out there, and I certainly, you know, respect those folks in the education industry. I have 2 kids myself, and I understand where everyone's coming from, but thank you for that. Make sure I can see. So I-285 Express Lane project, hopefully it's not new to you, and you're familiar, you know, with the project itself. It's actually a project within a program that the department is responsible for delivering, the Major Mobility Investment Program. What you see on the screen there is all the projects in the program, but we'll focus in on the I-285 Top End Express Lane because that obviously falls within your jurisdiction here in Dunwoody. So the Express Lane project, really much has not changed as it relates to the scope of the project. It's still an Express Lane project. It still fits within the overall system that we're building out in this program from an Express Lane perspective. It's still 2 lanes in each direction. As you can see on the screen here is a schematic of the limits for the project. Now, I don't know if you remember, but we did split this project into 2 construction packages. It's still one project as a whole from an environmental document perspective. and clearance perspective, but we did split it into 2 packages and offset the construction time. So it's not such a huge impact to the whole corridor of 285 with everything else that's going on. So what you see on the screen here are the I-285 Top End East project, which goes from the North Springs MARTA station on 400 down to the interchange at 285-400, and then goes east into the Henderson Road just past I-85. That's phase 1 of the construction package that'll go out. And I'll give you the dates on this in a second. And then phase 2 is I-285 from the interchange at 285-400 traveling west to Paces Ferry Road just past I-75. So that's the limits end to end for each construction package. What you also see on the screen are potential access points that we're studying right now. The yellow there is the interchange access points. That's a dedicated new interchange that does not currently have access. So that'll be an express lane only access point. And then you see the aqua or green there as a direct merge. So you can merge in and out of the express lanes via the general purpose lanes, just like you do on 85 moving north into Gwinnett County. So that's how the system looks as it relates to the project progress today. Nothing was really changed here regarding limits or our access points to date. Just to give a little closer view of each project, the limits, as I mentioned, are from the North Springs MARTA station down to Henderson Road on 285. 2 new barrier separated express lanes in each direction. It's going to be some at grade and some elevated, depending on what the impacts are to the environment. And also 1 lane both directions from I-85 to Henderson. So we'll drop one of those lanes at 85 and it'll connect to the express lanes going north on 85. And then we'll continue that 1 lane down 85 on the east side, which will connect to another MMIP project that takes express lanes down to almost I-20. And construction is scheduled to start in 2024 and complete substantial completion in 2028. So we have our draft environmental document over at FHWA for approval right now. So the west side, as I mentioned, has 2 barrier separated express lanes in each direction, starting at the interchange at Transform 285-400, going all the way to 75. We'll drop one of those express lanes and tie to the express lane system on Northwest Corridor at 75 and continue that express lane down to Paces Ferry, where we'll pick up with another MMIP project, taking you down to almost I-20 on the west side as well. Construction is scheduled to start in 2026. We offset those 2 projects, as I mentioned earlier, to reduce impacts because construction in Orange Barrel certainly has an effect on traveling public. So we want to make sure we offset those as much as possible to give relief to the traveling public, and substantial completion in 2032. Just a timeline of the project. We started back in 2018. Seems like many years ago, but time is traveling so fast. We've had a public meeting on this project. We went out to the public, which was in 2020, actually last year. And then we expect to go back out to the public for a public hearing open house in 3rd quarter of this year. As I mentioned, our environmental documents at FHWA for that draft approval. Construction starts in 24 and ends in 26. What are the current activities? Obviously, concept development is still ongoing. These are design build projects, so we don't do final design. We do enough so that the developer can bid on the job and do the final design for the project. And these are design build finance maintain job. The developer is going to bring money to build the project for us, and we'll pay them back over time. And they actually maintain the roadway, this segment of roadway, for a 35-year period for us, for the department. We're doing ongoing right-of-way acquisition right now. There's a lot of properties out there that are being affected in some sort of way, and we need to purchase some of that property. So we're in the process of doing that as much as we can. Some we can't do because we don't know what the final design is going to look like, but ones that we're comfortable with, we'll go ahead and contact them early as we can. There's a lot of utility coordination out there on the projects, whether it's a transmission line for Georgia Power, whether it's a gas line with Colonial Pipeline, and so on. We're having to do that coordination early so we can manage those risks and impacts to the construction schedule. And obviously, as we're looking at access points, we're trying to still make sure that we reach out to all stakeholders, such as yourself, to understand the impacts of access or lack of access for that matter, and then how that relates to the environment moving forward. So focusing in on a couple of areas, just because I know that these were, areas that have been in question before and certainly brought to you before. So Perimeter Center Parkway and Ashford Dunwoody Road bridges are bridges that will either have a connection or have some sort of impact on the project. So we will be providing as one of those direct access interchanges, access ramps to and from the express lanes to Perimeter Center Parkway. And you can see that on the left-hand side highlighted in the circle there. And then also express lanes moving forward. There at, I guess over, the express lanes will go over Ashford Dunwoody Bridge, as you can see highlighted there. And then also ongoing cooperation with the top end Transform 285-400 interchange, because they're building that project today, and we want to make sure that what they're doing fits within what we're bringing forward into the future. So that's what's going on in this area. So another area of inflection is the Cotillia Drive and Savoia Drive one-way pair conversion. As you remember, the reason we had to convert these to one-way pairs is to provide access. We could not provide access to express lanes here without doing that. So what we're doing is still moving forward that alternative, and you'll turn the two roadways that are currently in each direction into one-way pair, one-way eastbound and one-way westbound, with a loop on either end. One loop being on the bridge there that you see on the left, and the other one being on the east side. And we'll also have to do some work there in the center just to make sure that that works appropriately, as you can see on the screen there, that North Shallowford Road, I believe that is. So again, nothing's really changed here. A lot of ongoing coordination with property owners in this area because they are affected in some way. I think some initial acquisition is going on as well. And then a lot of utility coordination in this area. There's some transmission lines. And I believe this area also has that Colonial Pipeline in the area as well. So this is a pretty impactful area from across the board. So we're trying to manage that as best we can. This is that Chamberley Dunwoody Road Bridge. This was, and it's planned to be an advanced improvement project to get that out early, as I mentioned, to minimize those risks during the larger project. We're trying to make sure we get the money for this. So it's been, the procurement was supposed to start already, but we're delayed because we're trying to make sure the money's there to move this project forward. The plan is to widen that bridge. Obviously, we need to make sure that loop on Savoy and Cotillion happens so you can loop back around appropriately, and also account for some of the things that you guys from the city have asked for from an aesthetic perspective and or, pedestrian, more friendly access perspective. And we'll come to you once we get to that point to make sure we get an agreement in place and the funding tied to that is aesthetic features and extras that the city desires, and get that in the contract so that the contractor is responsible for building that under our project. So that's more to come on that in the future. And that's really all I had from an update perspective. As I mentioned, the draft EIS, which is an environmental impact statement, has been sent to FHWA. We actually received comments back last Friday. So we'll respond to those comments. Hopefully we address those comments and we get an approval of that draft EIS sometime later next month or early April. That allows us, once we get that draft approval, to go to the public again. And it'll be same type of public meeting, although it may be all virtual this time, which we've had success at the department over the last year doing virtual PIOHs or PHOHs with the platform that we created based on, the situation we're in. But we may be able to do a hybrid, or we may be able to do fully in public. Our goal is to do in public, in person, but we'll manage the situation as the time arises and make that right decision at that point in time. And obviously, you can find all the information on the project and the program at these websites you see here. And certainly, anytime you're welcome to reach out to me with any questions you have. So I'll open up to the floor for any questions that you may have.
Great. You might want to unshare your screen if you don't mind. But then you might have to pull it back up, but it's easier probably to see. John, we'll start on your end this time.
Great. Thank you, Tim, for the presentation. Second page of your slide under 285 Advanced Improvement Projects, you mentioned I-285 Peachtree Industrial. I really wish your lane access went to PIB. Explain to me how that's going to work, because I see that as a major thoroughfare, just as 400, 85, 75, the amount of traffic going up Peachtree Industrial back and forth. I don't understand why it's not part of it, but maybe it is with what you're saying here. Explain it
Right.
to me.
Well, there's not going to be express lane access directly to PIB. One, because there's not an express lane on PIB. And two, it's an existing general purpose interchange. And our policy is not to mix express lane access points with general purpose interchanges, which is why you saw those other interchanges we were building on bridges that didn't have ramps on them. So that's general policy. There's lots behind that. And I can dive into the weeds at some other time, but that is the general policy. The reason we're tying it into 85, there's an express lane on 85 and 75. And we stopped just sort of 20, but there's a planned future project program to take express lanes out I-20, both east and west. So you can see the vision for express lanes kind of coming to fruition there with the future build out of all the express lanes. That's why we're not making that connection here. However, we do recognize there's an operational concern there at PIB. And we've added outside of express lanes some operational improvements to correct some of those ramps, those curvatures, flatten those out. And then also that weaving condition that you have there. Folks
Exit
going-
30 is horrible in the sense of enter and exit. That's
Right,
just,
so we're correcting that just before PIB, so you can have more room and get that weave out of there. And also folks, as they weave from 285 to get to Savoy and Cotillion eventually, there's a weave there. We're basically building a braided ramp that gets people across each other without having to conflict there. So outside of express lanes, we do recognize the concerns and we're trying to address that here.
all right, let's talk a little bit about Cotillion and Savoy being one way. I understand there's going to be wraparound at all three locations, Chamberley, Dunwoody, Shallowford, and North Peachtree. You're building a new ramp or new bridge at Chamberley, Dunwoody, so that's taken care of. You're closing Shallowford. It sounds like you have to dig all that out to get extra laneage in there. What are you doing at North Peachtree? Because that's just as tight as Shallowford to a certain extent.
Right, I'm not sure of the plan for a detour per se. I know we have to do similar work there. And I believe one of those locations, if I remember correctly, had minor impact because there was enough room, but still had to do a little bit of work. But the one in the middle had the most work because it was so tight. So we're having to do a lot of work there to get the room for that lane and the barrier separation for the one-way pairs. I'm not sure exactly what we're doing at the other end, New Peachtree, but if we have a detour, we'll certainly bring that to the attention of you guys to get feedback. We also reach out to public safety officials, police, fire, and the school systems to understand the impacts of a detour. Sometimes we can do it, sometimes we can't do a detour. And there'll also be a public meeting for a detour as well.
I just want to make sure that North Peachtree, if needed to be closed and needed to be widened, that you do so in the sense, right now there's sidewalks in both Shallowford and North Peachtree, but there's also plans for parks connectivity, the path connectivity through various places. And I just want to make sure that the traffic flows appropriately and that the wraparound lane is there, because without it, I can't even imagine how that would work for some of our residents.
That's a great point. And we do recognize plans that are out there, future plans, certainly comprehensive plans that you guys develop that include improved bike or new ped bike facilities. And we take a look at those plans to make sure we are understanding what we're doing versus what those are.
Okay. Madison Square Condo Association was right in the buffer, right at Chamberley Dunwoody, very close to Chamberley Dunwoody. There's a possibility that some of that was going to be taken. Has that been decided yet? You sent me a letter back in March where you weren't sure.
Yeah, so we're still working on that. I think assessing the impacts to the tolling infrastructure and how tolling is going to work in that area. There's so much more than the roadway itself that goes into the express lanes, which is why we have additional impacts to utilities and otherwise based on the toll infrastructure that has to go in. So that's currently in place. I know we met with them early in 2020. So ongoing coordination is still happening in particular for that area and that for that condo building. I think it's along Cotillion Drive.
Correct. It's right next to McDonald's.
Right. So, we expect to provide more layout and information at the PHOH or later this year based on the assessment we're doing in that area. So a lot more work still ongoing in that area.
Okay, final question for me really regards the height of the express lanes and how will sound barriers be put in place to mitigate the sound. I'm not sure you have these lanes directly adjacent to any single family residential anywhere else in the system, but how does it work? How are you going to mitigate the noise pollution for our residents that are going to be directly abutting this?
Sure, it's a great question. And we have to do, it's federally mandated, we do a noise analysis and noise study on all of our transportation projects, and an air study for that matter, noise and air noise study. And that has been in its early stages done, and it's in the environmental document. And basically what it does is based on whether it's a residential or commercial facility along the corridor, we do an assessment. We put a receptor out there to hear what the noise is today. And we take that number and project it out to the future traffic, I think 20 years out from today, because traffic's going to be more in the future than it is today. And based on the outcome of that analysis, I'm giving you at a high level this policy. Based on that analysis, if mitigation is warranted, we look to find out what that mitigation can be to reduce the impact of a noise in the area. Once then a decision is made that yes, we can actually mitigate some of that, we may not be able to mitigate it all, and generally we can't. Then noise barriers will be designed accordingly to manage that mitigation that's received.
So do you have noise mitigation for lanes that are 40, 50 feet in the air above?
Yeah, everything, it's not just horizontal, it's vertical as well. The model itself is a very sophisticated model that takes into account vertical geometry as well. Okay. So we'll be able to tell exactly what that noise is doing vertically as well.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the update.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stacy, do anything? Okay. Joe?
Right. Thanks, Tim. I know you're the messenger, so you're on the stage here. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. You mentioned that I'm always about understanding the process. I remember back when the 285 400 PIOH was held and Marla Clowers held an open house, and I wanted to see the EIS, and it was only available in paper in binders, physically present. And you mentioned you published that, and it's sitting at FHWA now. So I went to your website and I look under NEPA and I don't see that. Is that document posted online for review?
It will be. Our first step is to get FHWA approval. Once the approval of that draft EIS is done, it goes out for public comment in general. And then also we're able to publish it then on that website that you're looking at on the Major Mobility Investment Program website. And the beauty about the platform that we built due to the virtual setting that we're now in is we're able to conveniently and easily put that into such a format that it's consumable, and you don't have to dig through paper. So we believe it's better for everyone, this platform online, to find all this information, including the document you're talking about.
Great. Yeah, that would be great to see that. Yeah, because it's very easy. I can filter by type, and you just NEPA. Of course, not a lot of people know what NEPA stands for, but I appreciate you having that out there. But that it will be posted. Do you know what that timeline looks like? So they have a draft of you when that would be, when you get that back? You have an idea?
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, we received comments last Friday, and the next step is to address those comments. Assuming that they've been addressed and no further comments are given to us, then they sign the draft. And it's a draft at that point, even after their signature. So we hope to have that next month or April at the latest. And that sets the stage again for us to schedule that public hearing open house where that document, the NEPA document, is going to be on hand. That's the difference between a PIOH and a PHOH. The environmental document draft signed is there for the public to see and online as we move forward.
Right. And then there'll be a final. It'll go back for final approval from the FHWA, correct?
That's correct. After the PHOH is held, we get comments from the public. We send it back to FHWA addressing those concerns where we can, and then get through the comment period. And then if they feel everything's good to go, they'll sign the final EIS document. Record of decision is what it's called in this case, and that lets us move forward to the procurement for construction.
Right. Okay. Just got a few other things here. Have you all talked to Chamberley about the one-way conversion to Savoy?
Yes, we've worked together.
Yes.
You have. Okay. So one individual who was on council was not aware, but that's
Sorry.
They don't have.
It's a while ago.
Yeah, it's been a while. I'd like to know more about the one-way conversions, of what the design characteristics and features are going to be in there to make it safer for people that are not in a car. So, if you go out to like pedinfo.org, et cetera, it talks about a lot of cities today are actually taking one-way streets that were designed and they're reconverting them to two-way. And it provides benefit to the local businesses. It makes it easier for pedestrians. It calms traffic. It reduces vehicles miles traveled, which reduces CO2 and particulate emissions as well. And we know that Chamberley has a big urban redevelopment plan over that 136 acres off of Savoy and 285, where they've got this mixed use, or they've rezoned it, where they're looking at greater density with the business center. And as well, we've got this future where we may be installing, hopefully, a bus rapid transit along toward North Shallowford. So I just want to know holistically, Tim, how all these different pieces are coming into play with that, with the one-waying of
I can address that if you want me to,
Sure,
Tim.
please.
So for the bus rapid, correct me if I'm wrong. So Chamblee very much would like a bus rapid transit stop at North Shallowford and 285 on their side of the interstate. Correct, Tim?
That's correct.
And the only way that works for them is to have one way each way, correct?
That's correct.
So that is why there's been no additional discussion. That's why it works for Chamblee, because their massive development that they plan there likely won't happen without the bus rapid transit stop. And so it's it's a chicken and egg kind of question. But the analysis shows that in order for what they would like to see happen there, they need a connection to transit.
Yeah, in
Okay.
order for the BRT station to operate in that area, you would want to have access to the express lanes, and the access point that we're creating involves the conversion to a one-way pair. Otherwise, you can't put an access point there. Correct.
So, Tim, maybe someone can get with Michael Smith, our Public Works, to talk about, I'm just reading again, I'm a at-large here, where they talk about, do we do additional curb? What can we do when we do convert it to one-way? Curb extensions, turning radius reductions, signal timing that discourages high vehicle speeds. And then what kind of accommodation are we going to have for bike ped along both Cotillion north side and Savoy and south side?
Right. Well, those are local streets. And what we're going to do is, if there's an existing sidewalk or multi-use path out there, obviously we'll make sure that's put back. Anything that's new that you guys are planning, we coordinate with you and see what options are available to get funding from the city to account for that, and see if we can put it in our project. That's a win-win for both sides. But any traffic calming measures that need to take place, or any other type of things on the local road, that would be the responsibility of the city. I will say that we will make sure that any signals that we touch as a part of this project get looked at and analyzed to make sure they're where they need to be, or a new signal needed for that matter, as it relates to what we're doing with the one-way pair conversion. But we certainly have coordinating with the city, all the cities on the top end for that matter. And we'll continue to coordinate with the city of Dunwoody regarding those concerns that you guys have, and try to reach a partnership, if available, to get things done where necessary.
Okay. And Tim, I know you're using the terminology local road, but it's a GDOT maintained route,
Yeah. Okay.
right? Yeah. So you're saying when they think, when our Dunwoody folks think of local, they think that it's not a GDOT
Sure.
route.
Sure.
So do you know what the speed limit's going to be posted on those?
I do not. I really don't know.
So I'm all for calm streets and safety, right? I am totally about making it as safe as possible for a 8-year-old child to go from the Georgetown Kroger, if they want to go to that new development on Savoy, or an 80-year-old retiree from Chamberley to go into Dunwoody to hit our trail system or access. So I hope that we get a little bit more information about the actual design characteristics and features of that, so we can make sure that it discourages speeding. Okay. Should we kind of entertain it?
Is that it, Joe?
And then I just had it in general. I mean, and then Lynn, you probably answered this as well. You all have been in conversations with the cities about trail access and accommodation,
Yes,
right? So that's all in play.
yes. In fact, yes, we just funded another study or a new study to do start the design,
Great. Okay.
or funded our part.
Perfect.
Pam, no.
Thank you.
All right, Jim.
Jim, thanks for coming out. Help clarify for me where we're at on the Chamberley Dunwoody Bridge. At one time, you were going to do the loop around construction separately from the bridge construction, but that's all one project now. Is that correct?
It is because I believe we're going to redo that bridge at first, ahead of the bigger project.
Right.
As it were, I think we were going to do, a separate bridge, but I'd have to confirm with the team to make sure that I am correct on that. It's been a minute since I've seen that. So I can do that and certainly let you know, but I'm pretty sure as a part of the bridge replacement for the advanced improvement project, the intent is to make it one.
Right.
But I'll double check.
Okay, thank you. I want to, reiterate John's comments about Madison Square. Those folks were very concerned about what would be happening with their access to Cotillion. And that, that may be the one piece of right of way in this whole project where, that piece of right of way affects more citizens, directly every day. That's their, that's quite a high density development, and that is their, daily ingress and egress from that property. So, to the point, to the extent that you can get what y'all are going to be doing nailed down between now and your PIOH this fall, that'd be very nice. I guess the other thing I want to reiterate that you've heard before is that obviously we're all concerned about sound, and to the extent that the sound walls can go up earlier rather than later in construction, that would be a very good thing. And I just wanted to make that mention one more time. And again, thanks for coming out. Appreciate it.
Hey, Tim, thanks for the presentation. Yeah, pretty much all of the points I had have already been addressed. However, I do want to expand a little bit on one of the points that John brought up, and that's the Peachtree Industrial Corridor. I know when they had the open house, I made my opinion on this very, very vocal. And, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I am a person that's lost more hours of my life than I care to think about on Peachtree Industrial Boulevard in the morning. That is a significant choke point on the whole top end. And it causes problems beyond just that interchange, beyond just that road. And you kind of said the same thing feedback I got when I brought it up, that, well, it's our policy. Policies can be evaluated. So it's my sincere hope that GDOT will take a very strong look at this and reevaluate adding an access. I mean, I know you said there's no managed lane access, or managed lanes on Peachtree Industrial right now, but currently there's no managed lanes on 285, yet they feed into 75. And I'd imagine some similar type of system could be put in place there. And then, of course, the second part of that would be money. I know, because adding another lane and would probably have to be elevated over what's there would cost money. But to me, not addressing this situation is penny wise and dollar foolish, because it's kind of like fixing all the water damage in your house and then saying, well, I didn't have enough money to fix the hole in the roof. You're not really addressing the cause of the problem. And I really, really, really feel strongly that this is an issue that needs to be addressed. When you look at the plan, and I'll explain why, it's not just the backup of the traffic. You mentioned the weaving and how it's going to be there at North Peachtree is going to be addressed and improved, but you also have an access point to the managed lanes there. So that you've already got a choke point backed up. Now all of these cars have to merge onto 285 just to merge off again onto the managed lanes. It just seems to me like common sense to just put a lane to encourage people to just go straight from PIB straight on to the managed lanes. It seems like it's an easy fix. And I can't stress enough how important this is. And it's not only because of the choke point there and the danger that the weaving I see happening as people are trying to get onto an already treacherous spot and then weave back over to get onto a managed lane. it's the domino effect that all of this gridlock causes specifically to Dunwoody, because what happens when PIB gets backed up, Waze and everyone's looking for a shortcut, and Dunwoody's that shortcut. And it puts an undue burden on our local roads as people from Gwinnett and Sandy Springs and elsewhere are cutting through our city to try and get access to these points, especially with proposed, things happening at North Shaliford. I just see Tilly Mill, Winters Chapel, North Peachtree Road, Peeler Road becoming nightmares as a result of this, if something isn't done at Peachtree Industrial and 285. So again, I know you said it's policy. I'm sure there's a money factor, but I really, really hope that GDOT will reconsider and reevaluate their position on that.
Right. Well, policy has meat behind it when it comes to safety and other things, and money is not really the issue driving that policy. To be honest with you, it's safety and all the things that ties itself to mixing two types of traffic, if you will. You've got general purpose, which is free to go as much as they'd like, and then you have managed lanes, which are controlled by the toll and infrastructure, and signage, beyond that, on how to make sure folks are able to understand what we're about to get into, the decision they have to make before they get into that system, and time associated with it. So I hear your comment. We've heard it before. I will say that we recognize the concern at PIB from a general purpose capacity, or not capacity, but operational issue. And we're trying to make sure we address some of that. I will say, having express lanes, never mind an access point here, has been hugely successful for relief on these local streets that you're talking about. Northwest Corridor, Powers Ferry Road used to be backed up morning and afternoon just as much as 75 was. Express lanes open, there's no issues on Powers Ferry anymore. So express lanes themselves is offering a solution for folks instead of following Waze on those side streets you're talking about. So we think it's going to be even better here, because this is in each direction 24 hours a day. That's a reversible facility up there, inbound in the morning, outbound in the afternoon. So I hear your concern. I'll take that back and make sure that they understand that concern. But it probably would be better addressed in an overall, general purpose improvement project as needed in the future. But we are addressing some as much as we can under our project operationally.
Thank you for coming. I have a couple of quick questions. Well, maybe not. First is on the Georgetown Bridge. The idea that when I suggested that they be combined was so that the residents don't have to be disrupted multiple times. And also because then it would allow you maybe to disrupt less, because you'd have the extra lane to use for traffic. And so I hope that's happening. We have an elementary school that has been split because of capacity issues. It hasn't mattered because they're not in person, but they will be by next year. And hopefully they'll be in the next few weeks. But half of the elementary school will actually be crossing 285 to go to school from Dunwoody. And so, the disruptions matter. And also the school system will be constructing a new elementary school just down the street at Chamberley, Dunwoody. And so the area is going to be pretty heavily impacted to begin with, but the relief that the fixing of the entrance ramp is going to provide is much needed. And I hope that that will stay accelerated and get done, as soon as possible, because it's a pretty big, pre-COVID, it was a pretty big backup. And I expect that as we go back to normal, it will return. So as soon as that can get done, we're here to support you on that. The top end mayors will be working with you on the trail. Our goal is Tucker, North Lake to the east, Cumberland, Cobb County to the west. Someone will be coming to a council meeting later this year to do a presentation. We just now starting to fund some early design work. And bus rapid transit, we're still kind of trying to figure all that out from a funding perspective with the ATL and everything else. With this project, if there's infrastructure funding, does it change the timing like from the federal government, or is this set like 2024 to start?
Well, our project is funded.
Right, okay.
Funded as it relates to how we're building this project and paying for this
Right.
project. So I don't expect that to change.
Okay.
It may affect timing on some other projects to
Okay.
bring it forward, bring some
Okay.
of those forward, but I don't expect this to change.
And then we just, if you know, so we're talking about the improvements we want, y'all have agreed to fund some of them. We have to fund most of them. What is your timeline, do you think, that when you would have to know, like for the bridge, for example?
Well, we're going to be starting the procurement of this project
Okay.
toward the end of this year after our PHOH really
Okay.
sets the stage for that. So
Right.
once we start the procurement and understand desires from local governments, we did it on 400.
Right.
We start the agreement or MOU process,
Mhm.
and the MOU outlines the amount and the general scope. And then once that's assigned by both parties, then we'll do an MOA, a memorandum of agreement, that really solidifies the true details of what goes into that and the money that's associated with it. So, and we want to get that done and out of the way early.
Okay.
So we will ask that you bring whatever consulting firm on board to provide the aesthetic features and drawings and things that we need to put in our contract, so the developer knows exactly what to build when they get out there.
So you think by the end of the year, we have to have all that in
We'll be
place?
starting those conversations, if not sooner, but certainly
Okay.
by the end of the year.
Okay, thank you. And then, as someone who was optimistic about bus rapid transit and then the project got split in half, is 2032 really when, it's going to take that long to finish across from the east to the west, from Tucker to Cobb County to Cumberland? Is that pretty accurate?
That's only for the west side, top end.
Okay.
So the east side's a couple years before that. So
Okay.
2028, I think it was, if the
Well,
slide.
I think the buses
reflects
have
it.
to come back. So, okay.
For the east side.
Yes. And can you tell me a little bit about the noise wall for the Georgetown pool area? Do you have any insight on that?
We don't know what that looks like yet.
Okay.
As we move the environmental process forward and the design gets more refined in that area, that'll give us an idea of what the noise study is giving us.
So there's a lot of work that's already happened in that area, but that wasn't in preparation for a noise wall?
We haven't started any construction, so
Okay.
work, you mean like actual construction?
Yeah, they were taking down trees and stuff earlier this year. Maybe Michael Smith has some
That wouldn't be
insight.
us for this
No, it
project.
wasn't for this. Well, it's probably not for this project. It's probably for 400 285,
For
which
the
is not
transport
you.
project, yeah.
Yes, okay.
Now they're building noise walls as assessed on that project.
Okay.
And it may be in this area, I don't know.
Okay, we'll find
But
out.
we have to do a brand new study for our project. So,
Okay.
which may, change what was out there from a noise perspective on their side, so.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Anybody else have anything else? Okay. Thank you for your time,
Thank you
Tim.
so much.
Moving on to the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second,
Moved by Jim, second by Joe. Any questions or discussion on the two things that are on there? No, seeing none, I call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sharon, that passes unanimously. And before you start reading, Sharon, I have a question probably for Bill Riley, maybe. I need to change my view. Hold on. I cannot leave the meeting. Gallery view. Okay, Bill. So
Yes.
for these next items, we have to vote on each of them, correct?
Yes,
But can we discuss them all at once?
yes.
Okay,
I think you can discuss them all if you. but,
okay, and we'll have to go through each of them. So if there's specific questions to each of them, then that's fine too. Okay,
yes.
all right. Sharon, whenever you're ready.
An ordinance to amend the city of Dunwoody zoning classification and map for zoning conditions of lot parcel number 18-347-01013, 18-347-01021, and 18-347-01028 in consideration of zoning case RZ 20-03 for 84, 130, and 140 Perimeter Center East, Dunwoody, Georgia 30346.
Okay, Richard?
Yes, I'd like to introduce tonight Mr. Paul Leonhard. He's the Planning and Zoning Manager of the City of Dunwoody. He's also my direct Community Development Assistant Director. He's an ICP. So I will present it case to him and he will lay it out.
Well, thank you, Richard. And Mayor and City Council, I'm excited to get to know you better in the next few months, to understand your vision, and then for me and my team to work with you all on achieving that vision in the next few years. So thank you very much, Richard. So, and I'll share my screen now, and you can see my screen. Is that correct? Okay, yeah, this case was before you twice now, so I'll keep it relatively brief. It's for those 3 lots on Perimeter Center East and Ashford Dunwoody Road. They're currently occupied by a vacant bank building. Compared to the last time you've seen this project in January, the applicant has updated new plans that were attached as part of your package. The overall development stays similar with the retail component and an age-restricted multifamily component, but there are changes as they pertain to the streetscape on Perimeter Center East, and then as it pertains to the amount of impervious and semi-pervious coverage on the lot, as was discussed as part of the public hearing. And those will be easier to see in relationship to the plan that was previously previously before you. So I'll try to address them one after the other. On the top here, you see the current site plan. On the bottom, the previously proposed site plan. You can see that there's a bit more green on the site. For instance, in that courtyard area for the multifamily building, where there previously was a swimming pool proposed, and now this is returned to green space and in a few other areas on the site. And this is easier to see on this sketch that the applicant has provided. That's also part of your package, but I wanted to address this one specifically because it's a little bit tricky to read, because the areas in green here are not green space. They are instead what's called sort of pervious pavement areas. So those are pervious concrete or pavement systems that allow for water to infiltrate through the system into the ground. And then in yellow, you have here sort of those actually green areas, so those natural pervious area grassed in a more natural state. And then in brown and gray, you have the impervious area, so the building footprint itself, and then your typical concrete or asphalt areas. Since you've seen this last, so the applicant has tried to reduce the ask from you and has reduced the total impervious cover on the site to 72%, and the total impervious and semi-pervious cover from 85% to 78%. Those are still above what the zoning district requests for development. So they will continue to ask for a special land use permit for this impervious and semi-pervious cover. A second key issue that came up was the streetscape, and the applicant has worked with us in community development and our colleagues in public works on addressing the streetscape on Perimeter Center East. So here you see the streetscape, sort of an example streetscape, where you previously had a painted bike lane on Perimeter Center East, sort of between the through lane and a right-hand turn lane. The applicant has now taken out the right-hand turn lane into the development on Perimeter Center East and has moved the bike lane adjacent to the sidewalk and buffered from car traffic by landscaping and trees to create a sort of a more comfortable bike facility than what was previously proposed. And for comparison, again, here, what was previously proposed on Perimeter Center East with the painted bike lane over here and an additional right turn lane into the development. This rezoning request comes with those 4 slops that the mayor had referenced just a minute ago. Only the request for slop 20-02A changes. Here, the request gets reduced to 78% from what was previously requested, 85%. Just for reference, we continue to have the 3 additional requests for multifamily housing, for setbacks, and for residential use at the ground floor level. And very briefly, like the sort of additional information that the applicant has provided to us has changed some of those conditions compared to what you've seen earlier. We have highlighted here in red the changes, and I'll only address those as part of the presentation. Condition number 5 here shows this updated 78% measure that I've referenced. Condition number 12 specifies that there is agreement with Ravinia to the south to connect the bike connection, the north-south bike connection from Perimeter Center East onto Ravinia Parkway at the time of construction. So we request that the applicant work with Ravinia on getting that built and connected through before a certificate of occupancy. There's currently not an agreement for the vehicular connection, so that would most likely be stubbed out. And then we have 4 additional conditions sort of that came partially from the public hearing that address the access from the sidewalks to the retail spaces, that address the balconies at the residential units, access to the plaza on top of the retail space. And then because the applicant has proposed like a very high use of these kind of pervious paver systems, we ask for sort of additional documentation by their engineer that it can be used in exactly sort of the configuration that they're proposing to do, and that they look at how it interacts with the specific local conditions on 84 Perimeter Center East. With this, I'll conclude the staff presentation, and we remain with recommending approval to both the rezoning and the 4 slopes.
Okay, council, I think I'll just go down the row and we can continue, we'll just questions in general, I think, rather than this particular item will work, if that's okay with y'all. And I'll start with Tom.
Thank you, Lynn. And Paul, welcome to the city. I look forward to working with you in the future, and I appreciate your efforts and all city staff's efforts with this and working with the developer. And I do appreciate the developer listening to us and requesting the deferment to give them time to work on some of the issues we raised. I have seen some improvements here, some things that I think they've gotten right in the improvements. But in other areas, I still think they've fallen short. And I was really eager to see what came out in the packet and to see what changes were coming to us. And I'm just being honest here. I'm sorry to say I remain underwhelmed by this project. I've heard some people say that, well, that this project is better than what is there now. And, if that's the bar we set for development in our city, we're on a really dangerous path. The perimeter center is, we're very fortunate to have that here in Dunwoody. I think it offers the best of everything. It is an asset that we need to nurture, and our stewardship of that asset is important because, like any asset, if it's not taken care of, it may lose its value. I mean, the perimeter center is not only a critical economic engine for our city, it is for the state of Georgia and really the Southeast region. And as such, everything that we do here needs to really be critically analyzed and make sure it's the right project for us. At the risk of sounding a little arrogant, I think we deserve the best of everything right here in Dunwoody. Unfortunately, in life, you rarely get what you deserve. You get what you're willing to accept. And again, if we're willing to accept projects that are not getting us to our potential and to our vision for the city, that we're going to fall short of both of those. I don't see this as being the right project for us in this location. I also have a concern about the age restriction here. Now I want to qualify that by saying, the city we've said that we want the options for age in place for our residents, and that's important to us. And I agree with that wholeheartedly, but age in place isn't necessarily age restricted. While they can coexist and be complementary to each other, they're not necessarily tied to each other. You can have age in place without age restriction. And unfortunately, I think developers have heard this age in place and I guess view age restricted as a kind of a Trojan horse to get projects by us that we might not otherwise approve, thinking that, well, if I put age restricted in here, that's something the city will approve. Whereas, if this came through as a regular project, they would not. And, that's a little bit dangerous. Obviously there's a solution in my mind to that. Is when I review the packet, I just take those two words out of it, age restricted, and look at the project for what it is. And would I approve this as a multifamily rental project without the age restriction part of it? I wouldn't. And I don't think adding age restricted should change how we view that. I'm also concerned that the age restriction could be an albatross. What if they cannot meet the demand to fill their units because of the age restriction? Then what happens? Are we left with a building that's half empty? Probably not. Probably whoever's managing the property is going to come back to the city and request another SLUP to change it to just multifamily rental. And then we've got another problem we've got to deal with. So there's just too many red flags with this. And too many things I'm uncomfortable with. I mean, this is a prime location in our city. It deserves to get a prime project. And in my view, this is not it. I think it's also important to remember that a little over a year ago, or about a year ago, I don't remember exactly, we rezoned this property for a hotel and some commercial. And so that zoning exists today. So there is a viable economic use for this project as it is currently zoned. And I know what the response will be. Well, the hotel industry has taken a big hit, due to the pandemic But I have to believe that's a short-term problem. And we shouldn't address short-term problems with long-term problems. We should look at what is the proper thing to do here at this property. I have to believe, I'm not an expert and I don't have a crystal ball, but I have been reading and trying to see what the long-term impacts on the hospitality business will be. And certainly no one is able to say with any certainty what will happen. But, the prevailing wisdom I see is that people are expecting an upturn in 2022. And by 2023, there should be a resurgence and hopefully starting to get back. And again, we don't know what kind of numbers are going to be in the hospitality business, but I have to believe that, long-term, a hotel is a very viable option here, that we're not going to remain in the conditions that have been created by this pandemic forever. And so we shouldn't make decisions on zoning based on the now. We should be making those decisions based on the future. Another thing to consider is, as that recovery begins to happen, I think you want to be on the crest of that wave. I mean, this project isn't going to pop up out of the ground tomorrow. It's going to take 2-3 years or longer before it's open and operational. And if everything that I've read about the hotel business is correct, then again, you're going to be on the crest of that wave when the hotel business starts to rebound with a brand new product that would hopefully be successful. I have to believe, obviously the impact on the hospitality business is going to change from areas, but if we do our job properly, Dunwoody is going to remain a destination for both business and leisure travel. And I believe that we'll have an economically viable hotel business remaining here in Dunwoody. And so I have to believe that, in my opinion, that is a much better use of this property as it is currently zoned than what is before us today. So again, I don't necessarily have any questions. I asked a lot of questions at the last meeting, and those were answered both at that meeting and in some of the changes that have been made. I don't see the reason to re-ask those questions. I just wanted to let my comments be known, and my thoughts be known that it concerns me where we are with this, and I would prefer the current zoning remain in place.
Thank you, Jim.
Still thinking about all of that, to be quite honest, Tom, because I really all I heard was that you'd rather see a hotel than the multifamily residential. And, having looked at this type of project, I think that the multifamily residential could be a real good thing for all the restaurants in the area. And we all say we want more more quality restaurants in Dunwoody. And, there are a whole pile of them right across the street in 2 directions, and more coming as part of this development. So I don't know. I guess my only question really is the amenities area. My comment on that earlier had been that, it was, that was listed as a pool in the old amenities area that is now pervious area. And I kind of pointed out it probably didn't work from a sun angles point of view. You weren't going to get much sunlight on the whole pool area. And, are you planning on a pool in that amenities area, or is the pool gone by the wayside?
Don, you want me to answer that?
Yeah, is that a question for the developer?
Yeah, that's a question for the developer.
Yeah, we have a presentation to follow this that has updated renderings. We did move the pool to the top of the parking.
Okay.
So we listened very carefully the last meeting. And we couldn't take all the comments into consideration.
I'm going to have the developer do their presentation then.
Okay,
And
yeah,
then
that
we'll do
answers my question right there.
That might answer a lot of your
That
questions.
was really the only question I had.
Okay.
Right.
All right, so.
Thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing, what else you've got in your presentation.
All right, terrific. So nice to see you all again, Madam Mayor, City Council members. My name is John DiGiovanni. I represent JSJ Perimeter LLC, the developer of the property. With me is Rob French of Phillips Partnership and Laurel David of Galloway Law Group. So I want to start out by saying, and I think somebody just mentioned this, is that we really appreciate the deferment to today to give us a time to work with staff and come back to you with what we think is the best possible site plan. You know, my approach has always been to work with city councils and the community in a collaborative effort to arrive at something that we could both get behind and that benefits the community and obviously is economically viable. So we spent a lot of time with staff vetting out all the options. Paul, thank you. You did a great job in the presentation. We appreciate that. And I also want to thank Richard for both their assistance and guidance as we refine the site plan. So the next slide is just sort of a recap of the property, 2.86 acres. I think everybody knows where it's located at the intersection of Ashford, Dunwoody, and Perimeter Center East, and across from the main mall entrance. And so now to the pervious and impervious, which was obviously the biggest concern that was put forth. And we appreciate the city's comments, the council's comments. We appreciate the comments of Mr. Wolford and Mr. Hirsch, who brought it up. And we tried very, very hard to reduce the impervious area and improve the site plan. So one of the things I want to bring up is that, as Mr. Lambert mentioned, the current approval is for the hotel and the retail essentially in the same configuration as it was before, more or less. And that site plan has an 85% impervious coverage. It also does not have any of the improvements that we've agreed to in this last round of discussions to Perimeter Center East and the bike lanes. So by this site plan and this game plan, we not only reduce the impervious area, but we provide benefits that were not included in the last approval. So I'll turn it over to Rob here, who can outline exactly what we've done.
Yeah, briefly, and Paul did a real good job of kind of explaining some of this. So I'm just going to kind of hit the highlights a little bit. As been mentioned, we changed the multifamily courtyard to all pervious, and that's going to be done with landscaping and then some peak gravel walkways. But for the most part, it's all going to be landscaping. We eliminated some parking and increased the green space here. We even went as far as making the building footprint overall smaller to increase the ability to have some more green space on the courtyard side. And then we increased the tremendous amount with the seating area that'll be a permeable turf. And then, of course, we've increased to a lesser extent along the streetscape as well. We had hoped to do a pervious pavement system or something along that line for the bike lane and the road that we're putting in, but we also sensitive to needing to comply with the city standard for both of those sections. So we've kept them impervious 100%.
So these are some of the site improvements that we've agreed to through the approval process, including going back to the hotel approval. The first thing is the contribution to the left turn lane improvement from Ashford, Dunwoody, turning left onto Perimeter Center East. We've agreed previously to a $20,000 contribution to that improvement. We also had agreed to improve the crosswalk, as you can see, between our site, thank you, and providing safe harbor in the crosswalk going over to the adjacent shopping center across Perimeter Center East going north. We've also provided improvements along Perimeter Center East, which Paul had alluded to, which is the secure bike lane and additional sidewalk and landscaping and the removal of the turn lanes. We've also provided the pedestrian bike lane and road connection to Ravinia. Now, to that point, that bike lane and pedestrian access is on our property. We've agreed to put that in at the city's request. That is being counted as an impervious surface, which is hurting our numbers by at least 2%. So I'd like the city to take that into consideration. The future connection to Ravinia, which I pointed out, and then we are dedicating additional right-of-way to the city that from the entire perimeter of the property, from Ashford, Dunwoody, all the way around to perimeter center east. So those are the things that we've agreed to, that we've given in exchange as good citizens, because a lot has been said about stakeholders. We own this property. We're stakeholders in Dunwoody by virtue of that. And I live here, so my name is associated with this, and we want to make sure we put the best product forward. You can go on to the next slide, Rob. So this is the section that Paul had alluded to. This is the Ashford Dunwoody. Rob, if you want to jump in and make some comments here, feel free.
Yeah, the changes that we made here were reducing the cover so that we could take advantage of the pervious turf that we added across the front here. Otherwise, the section is consistent with current zoning. And this is predominantly the section all the way along perimeter center east that highlights the protected bike lane that we've incorporated and moved the curb all the way out to a single travel lane location. So we're now constructing basically new sidewalk, bike lane and landscaping from approximately here all the way out to here.
And as part of our calculation, we're not getting benefit of that increased landscape buffer that's there now because it's outside our property line.
But it's obviously a big benefit to the pedestrian streetscape along both Ashford, Dunwoody, and PCE.
Yeah, so we're putting it in, but not getting benefit for it. So now to the site plan overall to answer some of the other questions. So this is the ground level approach. As you can see, we took the pool out and replaced it with pervious natural surface. We've also taken some pedestrian access between the multifamily building and the commercial building and made that pervious and added a considerable amount of landscaping in other areas that we've improved. Go on to the next one, Ralph. So the way we're connecting the building is through a plaza / bridge, which connects the two. We're going to use a pervious method there, slotted walkway, which has been used in other applications. That allows rain to fall to the ground below it. And so that's how we're getting rainwater to ground level. You can also, go back one.
Sorry.
Too fast.
One ahead of you.
So as you can also see that the extension of the building, which is over the parking deck, and the relocation of the pool, and there'll be other amenities up there, bocce ball courts, outdoor dining areas, and all sorts of amenities that the residents can enjoy. Okay, Rob. So this is a look at the building on the perimeter center east side. That is the drive under that's circled in red there. And that takes you into the surface parking area and to the parking garage. And of course, all of the retail, the commercial side is going to be a dual entrance facility. So you'll have storefront on Ashford Dunwoody and storefront on the interior. So you can access the businesses from either side of the property. Okay, Rob. And then the top picture there shows the corner of Ashford Dunwoody looking from the mall. And that's essentially what you'll see. Each tenant will have their own logo and their own storefront design. So this will be much more energized than what you're seeing there. Not knowing who the tenants are, obviously we don't know what those ultimate finishes will be.
John, can I ask you a quick question? The top picture, that's there in your current zoning, right?
Yes, that is. That's there.
Okay, so that's what would be in front of the hotel if you built the hotel, correct?
Correct.
Pretty much? Okay, thank you.
Well, the difference here is we took the second and third floor and shortened it. It does not go all the way to the corner so that we can use the roof of the first floor as outdoor space. So that'll be all seating area. So people can sit outside, tables and chairs and umbrellas, and they can look out onto Ashford, Dunwoody and watch the traffic go by and have a drink.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify those. So that with some slight changes, this doesn't change from your last plan.
Correct. That's correct. The bottom is the full extent of the corner of Ashford, Dunwoody, all the way to the end of our property on Perimeter Center East. So you see the full length of the residential building. This is all to the PC2 requirements. In the circle is the plaza that we connect from the multifamily building to the commercial building, which leads you right to the open area on the first floor rooftop. And so you can walk from the residential building and enjoy the commercial without having to go down the elevator, walk outside, go down the block, and then back into the commercial. So you can walk right into the commercial. And I think this is a very big advantage and consideration for an age-restricted property. Ease of access. They can go to dinner, they can walk back home, they can go get a coffee. There's a number of positives to connecting those two structures. This is a list of potential amenities that we're considering for the building. I won't go through them. I went through them the last time, but it is the type of things that those who are looking to rent in this facility, in this type of facility, would expect. So my comparison here is if you're 25 and your apartment's not exactly what you want, you really don't care because you might move next year, or you might get married and move into a house. But this is the last stop or next to last stop, and people who are moving into this facility are wanting certain things. They expect certain things, and they have the ability to pay for certain things. So we're providing additional amenities, the outdoor gathering spaces, the outdoor dining facilities, the summer kitchen, the demonstration kitchens, all of these amenities that we believe that people of that age group would want. And I'm in that age group. So unlike some of our other product that we've built, I'm a multifamily developer, is that it's usually not my age group. And so we have to go out and decide, well, what is the 20-somethings want? And here, this is my age group. So I can actually put a thumbprint on this and go, well, if I was living here, what would I expect? And that's part of what formed the list of amenities here. You go on to the next one. So our project, we believe, brings new economic activity to the city, obviously. It enhances the corner of Ashford, Dunwoody, and Perimeter Center East. I mean, currently, we have a vacant parcel with a vacant former bank building. It provides for jobs, both construction and permanent jobs, and provides a quality amenity. And so our current approval, to Mr. Lambert's point, it could be 2 to 4 years before hotels start. And then you have a 2-year to 3-year construction time. So it might be 7 years before you see a completed hotel on this project. Because we had to go third party on the hotel, because we don't build hotels, we have to rely on third party participants. I'm a multifamily developer. The certainty of development here has dramatically increased with a change in this plan, with a change of use, because now we can do it in-house. And I can tell you that if this is approved, not only do you get a better site plan with more pervious surface than the prior approval, but the likelihood of development to begin late this year or early next year are considerably higher than they are with a hotel. And I'll welcome any questions.
Okay. Jim, do you have anything else? Pam?
Thank you. That helps some of the questions I had, because I too was concerned, like what Tom said. I was so excited to see the presentation, and when we got our package, I was like, it's nothing's there. I said, no. And like you, I'm in that age group, and and it is a need that we have to have here in Dunwoody that we don't have is age-restricted living. And that doesn't mean assisted living. We have those. This is active adults my age that want to stay in Dunwoody and not go to Florida because we like the change of seasons and I want to stay in Dunwoody, but I don't want my big house. So, and the other plus is to keep our business district alive, healthy, wealthy. We need bodies, and we need bodies more than just the business community. We need people to live here. And this is an age group that I believe will welcome that piece of property because it is amazing. I mean, it's across from the mall. You can walk to MARTA to get to the airport. You can walk to restaurants. It's a beautiful piece of property for someone to have a residence in. I am concerned though, if you use one word, and this is why I'm concerned, you say you're considering these amenities. And so I'm still not convinced that you're gonna build me the apartment and the place I wanna live in, because I'm still not really, I don't know, I'm not believing it yet. I'm not seeing it, and I want to, because I really want it, but I don't see it. So how can you help me here be, certain you're gonna build this beautiful building that's gonna be the Ritz-Carlton for 55 plus, and people are gonna wanna be there, and they'll fight and have a waiting list to get in.
Right. Well, we call it the Four Seasons of.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, I get you, Joe. I can tell you that most, if not all, those things will be there. It's a matter of space, and we'll do a market study before we start full-scale plans, and that market study will tell us what they want. I learned a long time ago. I started in the retail world. What I want doesn't matter. If everybody wants blue bicycles, but I want a yellow bicycle, what I want doesn't matter. You're building a blue bicycle. So the point here is we want to make sure that we have the right amenities in there. So when I say considered, I mean, those are everything we're going to try to put in there pending a market study to determine what people actually want. All right, by the time we get around to this, maybe nobody wants to play bocce ball anymore. Maybe it's something else, right? I mean, I remember when shuffleboard was the big thing in something like this. You couldn't get anybody to use a shuffleboard anymore, a shuffleboard court. Now what they used to call with the sticks? Yeah. But now all the rage is bocce ball. 6 months from now, could be something else.
Well, technically, I think shuffleboard is making a comeback because my 30-year-old just joined a team down in Florida.
Well, see,
So just FYI.
well, see, our market study could say shuffleboard's on the way back, and we might see bocce to
I get your point. I get your point. Yes, sir. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
our intention is to build a first-class Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons facility that you or I would want to live in.
Right. Okay. That's really.
Oh, and one other thing, to your point, we have in that amenities list a office share within the building. A year ago, you would have never even thought of that, right? But now so many people are working from home, but they don't want clients to come in their house, in their apartment. So we provide it right on site. So we have 3 or 4 or 5 offices where you can have a meeting on the property and but not have them come in your house. A year ago, you would have never thought of that. It wouldn't have even been a consideration.
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Joe, do you have anything I can't?
I don't have a lot of specific comments. I'll make a general statement though. As I mentioned last time, we see things at the end of the process rather than at the beginning. So you've gone through all this hoops and so on. And I'll take it back to the staff and the other folks that you've talked to in the back, but the things that we were asking for modifications on from last time, I would have liked to have them just already by default. I personally don't want to have to be asking for these things that we just want as a city. Just have it incorporated into design. It shouldn't be something that look what we're giving you now. I'll just be frank with that. It should just be incorporated by default there. I'm going to be that, that's all the comments I have right now. I'll defer things.
Okay, thank you. Stacy.
One is just well, first of all, welcome to Paul, welcome to Dunwoody. Looking forward to meeting you in person as well. Real quick question on procedure. Why does the impervious surface not go to the ZBA but in a SLUP?
That's specific for those perimeters and zoning conditions.
Okay.
In every other zoning district, it would go to the CBA. For these zoning districts, it goes to y'all.
Gotcha. Okay. And I hear my colleagues up here about, if we want better restaurants, we need more people living there. I would like to point out that there are 3,000 apartments already zoned for High Street and 900 condos zoned across the street at Perimeter Center East. I am struggling to vote to approve apartments in Dunwoody. We haven't done that since we became a city. We have not approved apartments in the city of Dunwoody since we became a city. Condos, yes. Townhomes, yes. Apartments, no. I am struggling when you say you intend to build a first class. Projects in the world is paved with good intentions that fail. And I just am struggling to vote for apartments in Dunwoody with good intentions. So I don't really have any question other than the ZBA procedure.
Well, if I
Thank
can
you.
answer that, I think the distinction here is where High Street and some of those other projects are going to attract people into the community who are younger. We're trying to keep people from leaving the community who have sold their houses, pocketed a lot of money, and they're deciding to go elsewhere because they don't have an option in the city of Dunwoody. This gives them an option in the city of Dunwoody. They're of an age where they don't want to actually buy and own a property, but they don't want to live with a bunch of 25-year-olds in High Street. They want something a little more, elegant, upclass. So this product gives them an option to stay within the city of Dunwoody. And so they'll be there spending money and supporting the local businesses. And the other advantage of this particular product is, by its nature, it doesn't generate school children, right? So listening to your earlier comments about the condition of the schools in the city of Dunwoody, where High Street and other projects are going to bring school children into the community, this does not. So I think that's the distinction.
John.
Yeah, looking at this project, if I had my druthers, this would be a condo project. That being said, I also have heard from many of our residents who are looking for a place to live, to sell their big old house and to stay in Dunwoody. And I'm looking for options. We have not had a multifamily rental senior project of a scale that has fit that bill until today. I think this works. I like the balconies. I like the amenities. I like the look of the building. I like the location. Yes, there's 3,000 apartments on every side of this development, but those are for a different demographic. I'm hopeful that this location works, that the amenities work. I do have a couple of questions regarding the SLUP for the zero lot lines to the immediate east. That's a parking deck. Has there been any feedback from neighbors regarding the zero lot lines? I guess that's a question for staff.
We have not received any feedback, which is surprising to me. But since I took over the case in January, we have received no feedback, neither positive nor negative, on the project at all. Richard, you may be more familiar with something that happened earlier.
Yeah, we have not received anything They were notified by the applicant, the owner, or every resident has seen the signs. It was advertised in the paper, so.
And immediately to the east, I know we have the access road and the bike trail, but right next to that, the next property over, it's a parking deck, correct? And it's really close to the lot line. Is that, am I looking at that correctly?
South,
Richard, developer?
Yeah.
there's a parking deck on the Ravinia property to the south.
To the south. Oh,
Yeah.
on Perimeter Center East. What's next to Perimeter Center East?
Along Perimeter Center East, that's the apartments that are substantially lower in grade to the deck.
Okay. Next question I had was regarding your impervious or pervious. If the developer could go to maybe slide 2 of your slide deck, there was a mapping or of showing your pervious versus impervious.
Did y'all hear that? He would like to see.
I'm
Okay, thank you.
pulling it up and gotta find the share button again.
There's one slide in there that just, I don't understand. There it is. That's the one. Dark green is pervious, right? That driveway right there. Right there, right where your thing is. How much rain is going to fall on that for the pervious?
That particular area is part of the entrance below the building, but it's going to have a lot of sheet drainage, and then that's being a vehicular entrance. So anytime it's raining, it's going to catch all of that as well. But it's going to be pervious paving.
Right, it's pervious paver, but
Correct.
Is that going to, is this, can you stand on that driveway and see the sky?
No.
No. So
No,
you're taking credit for pervious pavers that go under a building? Why don't you put the pervious pavers in the basement too?
Well,
We don't have a basement.
the reason it's there is because the tan area above it, it slopes downhill. So when it rains, the water is going to sheet over that green area and then percolate into the ground. And some engineer smarter than I am figured that out.
All right, when I saw that slide, I
Yeah.
saw you taking credit for something that I didn't see was even going to get wet.
I said the exact same thing, by the way.
You did. Good evening, Laurel, David. Yeah, actually, I was just going to say, John said the same thing when he looked at the, when we were working on this exhibit, but there is going to be sheet flow actually coming from the street. So, and then whatever, when the cars make that turn and drive in there, whatever residual water drops off them will also. So not only will it just be water, but it'll also be the most vehicle abused water that will be able to go in there and perk.
All right, thank you. I have no other questions. I appreciate the information.
Does anybody have follow-up questions? Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. Since I missed the presentation when I spoke, so, and I'd just like to make a comment on it. That's the second time with this presentation that information was provided at the meeting. It's just very helpful for us in asking our questions if we have all the information ahead of time. It's hard, when we get thrown out all this information at the day of the meeting, especially at the day that we're making the decisions. I would strongly request for future development that we get all of these presentations included in our packet so we can properly evaluate them. I also, I do have one question for the developer, but before I get to that, I just want to address a comment that Jim made about, because if I wasn't clear in my earlier statement, I want to clarify that he said, it sounded like I just preferred a hotel to apartments, and that wasn't necessarily what I was trying to get across. What the point I was trying to get across is that there is an economically viable use for this property as it's currently zoned. And when we rezone a property, that's something that we're supposed to consider. So that was my reason for bringing that up. Not to say that I preferred hotels to apartments. And if I didn't make that clear, I apologize. Getting back to the project, I do have one question. I didn't ask it in the first part, but I did want to ask it now because it was something that I asked at the last meeting, and wasn't addressed in the new plan. So I just wanted to understand, and that's the parking lot that kind of sits next to the courtyard. As I counted, there's 13 parking spaces there, with a parking deck about 20 feet away. It seems to me such a wasted opportunity to, first of all, you could probably get rid of the slup on impervious surface if you just turn that into a nice feature there for the residents. And I understand that I don't know what the requirements are for accessible parking. I know there's a valet lot there, but certainly architects and engineers could come up with a creative solution to still get that in there while creating a really spectacular amenity in that space rather than wasting a lot of space to park 13 cars. So why was that left as is? Was there a reason? I'd just like to hear that. Thanks.
Yeah, and we heard your comments the last time, but from the very beginning of us looking at the project and talking to retailers, restaurants have told us that a larger percentage of their business is now takeout or delivery. And those 13 spaces there are primarily dedicated for 10 or 15-minute parking so that Uber Eats and DoorDash or whoever they're using can park and pick up the food and go without impeding the traffic elsewhere. And without it, I will tell you right now that we will not get a single restaurant retailer there. And that's their comments to us.
Okay, well, I've been areas where I've had to get out of my car and walk 20, 30, 40, 50 feet, to get to a restaurant. I've done a lot of takeout in the past year, as many of us have. And I don't need to be right at the door to order, to pick up my food, with a parking deck right there, and where you could reserve a whole row of spots for Uber Eats or for takeout only. It just seems like such a wasted opportunity at this site, and something that would be a dramatic improvement, in my opinion. And like I said, you could probably get rid of one of your slup requests, because that might push you down to the threshold that you need for pervious surface. But that's just a personal disappointment on my point. But I just wanted to ask that. I did have another question, and it's slipping my mind right now, so I'll turn it back to you, Lynn. And if I do think of it, I'll wave to you. Thank you.
You'll have to shout because I can't actually see you over the screen.
Lynn,
Okay, go ahead, Stacy.
Paul, what's our definition of age-restricted housing in Dunwoody? Because if you look at the SLUP for the age-restricted housing, it doesn't give a definition. It just says that to allow residential use of age-restricted multifamily. But what's our definition of that?
We actually don't have a local definition because we didn't have that much of that housing type so far. So I had looked it up myself too. In the absence of that we would stick with what the federal government provides as age-restricted housing, and that's 55 plus. So 80% of the residents need to have at least one person living there who is 55 years or older. 20% of the housing units can consist of only people who are younger, and then I believe that people under 18 years old are exempt, so that they can not live there.
Okay, thank you.
Jim.
Quick comment, Tom. You kind of dinged our applicant for not providing the information, but that diagram is in your packet. It's item.
Some of them are, but not the whole presentation.
Well,
A lot of information. I didn't see it.
Well, the amenity sheet, okay, but you seem to be speaking specifically to the pervious impervious diagram, and it was definitely in there.
Elevation drawings and other information.
Okay, yeah, okay, I'll give you that. There was,
and I think there's value in us having it ahead of time, and I think we should have had it ahead of time. So, but anybody have other questions, comments? Okay. Oh, Joe has his hand up. I'm sorry.
That's fine. But, I appreciate what Tom said as well, just thinking out of the box of creating green space. Again, the whole thing, if you design your city for cars, you're going to get more cars. If you design your places for people, you get more people. I'd rather have people-centric than car-centric. any way, shape, or form. I'd like to do that. And yeah, housekeeping, yeah, put everything together as once. You deferred, you extended it. And if you needed to ask for another extension, I'm sure that we would have been amenable until we had everything in one packet. Thank you.
If I could take the blame for that, just so you know, as a rule, when I work with clients, and I've worked with a lot of clients in Dunwoody, certain things that are not required as part of the zoning usually are the things that go in the presentation that are not submitted formally to the city. So, for instance, a rendering or elevation is not required as part of the zoning package. A list of whatever amenities that you are proposed for your development, that's not a requirement as part of the formal application process. But what I hear you asking though is in future to provide the PowerPoint or whatever presentation that we are putting together so that you all have a time to review it before council. I totally see the practicalities of that rather than us flipping through these PowerPoints real quickly. You get a chance to look and digest the information. So I appreciate that, and we'll make a note of that in the future. Thank you.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I just remembered my question. I just wanted to ask and get some clarification on the timeline. If the project as presented tonight is approved, is this shovel ready? When do we expect construction to begin? When can we expect tenants to start moving in?
Well, if we do get approved this evening, then I suspect that planning and design will take probably 6 to 8 months. And it would be my hope that we could break ground before the end of the year or very early in 2022. This is compared to the hotel, is considerably faster to come out of the ground.
Just out of curiosity, what makes it a faster build?
Well, because it's not a faster build. Because there's no because multifamily is doing well. And we're multifamily developers, we can do this in-house. We don't have to, the hotel developer was a third party. So they have their own financing concerns, their own economics they have to deal with. They were just basically buying the pad and building the hotel. And because of the current situation, most of the studies, most of the analysts will tell you, and I think you even mentioned, that hotels are not going to rebound, especially those that are travel-based hotels, until late 2022 or early 2023. Well, if that's the case, then they're probably not going to commit to a deal until that time frame. And then there's probably a 2 or 3 year construction time frame. So now you're looking at 5, 6, 7 years before we're even coming out of the ground. Here, we can start planning tomorrow.
And you said you would hope to get construction started within a year. How long for the build out? And like I said, when do you think tenants would start moving in after construction begins?
Yeah, we usually plan on a 30-month timeline from the time we break ground to the time of delivery and stabilization. 20 months for construction, 10 months for tenants to move in and for the property to stabilize. Maybe a little longer because it's age restricted, and that generally is a slower lease up than regular multifamily.
I'm just going to throw this out here, and I'm just as a question. As a condition for approval, could we attach a timeline for start of construction, Richard? And I mean, I know the developer would have to agree to that, and I'm not sure that they would, but obviously one of the issues that we're hearing here is that timeline is a priority for him. But if it's going to take just as long to get this built as perhaps another project, I would like to see the rezoning revert if this project isn't started within a certain time period, and we could discuss what might be appropriate. And I don't know how everyone else feels in that. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, that's been a standard ask of mine for several years. So, Richard, are you there, or Paul? So the last, Richard maybe knows
I'm here.
more. So, standardly it's not a word, but lately I have been attaching time, X number, it's usually 2 years, right? It's pretty much what I've been doing. Is that right, Richard?
Yes, it is.
And it was 2 years till happens? The land disturbance, how have we been wording that?
Either land disturbance permit, because that's going to take some significant amount of time.
Mhm.
I would tie it to that land disturbance permit.
Okay. Okay. We'll get, okay.
And Bill, if you could comment on it.
Sorry, they're gonna have to agree to it.
Right.
Is that something with the
Right.
that you all would agree to?
Well, is it tied to 2 years to pull the land disturbance permit? Is that my understanding?
Richard?
It depends on what you all want.
Okay. We'll puzzle it out up here. And Tom, do you have any thoughts?
Not necessarily. I just want to make sure that this zoning doesn't sit in perpetuity.
Okay.
And we're 10 years down the road and nothing started.
Right. And I'm on that. So, yeah. Okay. I have a few other things. So can I work it into all that? Anybody else? John?
There was a question on if the age restricted didn't happen, if for some reason you couldn't lease out the property. Somebody mentioned that you would want to come back and redo the SLUP to allow just anybody could live there at that point, take off the age restriction. Is there a thought? I probably wouldn't approve that. I wouldn't vote for that because again, that's just an apartment complex to me. Is there any thought of allowing condos conversions in the sense of, has any of part of this property ever been thought of being part condo, part apartment?
Well, I'm not a condo developer, so it wouldn't be something I would do. But to your comment, the thought of coming back and asking for the age restriction to be eliminated or removed hasn't even crossed my mind. So, and that would be, of course, something the city council would have to approve. So that's well within your control. Our plan is to build this product the way we've presented it.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to try to understand what would happen if the age restriction for any reason didn't work out and you wanted to come back to us. I would personally much rather it be converted to condos versus taking the age restriction off, but that's just my opinion. So thank you. No other questions.
Jim, go ahead.
John, if I could comment briefly, it's a longer conversation than we want to have here at the dais, but the legal environment out in the world is such that condos are very, very, very problematic. So that's why nobody's proposing condos.
Right. Okay. I have a lot of questions, but I'm just trying to Google something as we work. I think, and Bill, this may be a question for you, that an age restricted apartment complex or other housing development goes through a HUD process, correct?
If they're going, yes.
And can we require that it go through HUD? I think it has to actually to be able to say no children. That there has to be, what is the process for legally saying you're 55 plus? Do we know? Does anybody know?
Laurel could probably answer that better than I can.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't, to be honest, I don't know that there is
Right.
a formal application
I
process.
think there probably has to be something because you're with the 55 plus determination, you're actually allowed to discriminate. And
Right,
so
but
it's the only housing type. So what is it that because the question, one of the fears in the community about this project or any project is that magically overnight it won't be 55 plus anymore. And so I think there are assurances built into the process. That's what I think. I don't think you can just snap your fingers and suddenly become not 55 plus.
Well, I don't know what their funding stream is, but if they go for funding for the 55 plus, then they're going to be bound to it for the entire period. That I do know.
But I think, okay. Could they not refinance under that scenario, Bill?
I think they're bound to it. They're bound to it.
I don't like I thinks, and it's
Well,
nothing
I
personal.
can't
No, I mean, I
answer
think we need to get, I'm hesitant to approve this without knowing that answer, just because, but let me go ahead with some of my other
Well,
questions.
I think I might be able to answer that.
Okay.
The HUD restriction for age restriction is tied to HUD financing. We're not using HUD financing. We're using their definition, but it's part of the zoning condition, which is what obligates us to maintain the 55 and older.
So that would be entirely under the city's control. So there is no application process. There's legal protection. And you have to, of course, if you're claiming federal legal protection, there's probably, a whole 100-page book of all of the policies and procedures that you have to adhere to in order to make sure that you're legally qualified for that exemption. But there are regulatory requirements in order, as you say, to be able to effectively discriminate. And that is that's the 55 and older. And that is what protects the John's company from basically being sued for discrimination for refusing a younger person.
Yeah, I'm reading. I'm sitting here reading. Yeah, so.
I just found something that said Housing for Older Persons Act, 1995.
Right.
Can exempt you from any discrimination.
Right, but this, okay. All right, I'm coming back to that in a minute because I kind of think it's critical. But the on the condition number 19, can someone pull that up? I know we haven't looked at the stuff in a little while, please.
I can pull it up, Mayor.
Thank you. I guess I could have pulled it up actually, except actually I can't because I don't. Okay.
Give me just a second.
Mhm. Thank you. Okay. Nope. Thank you. So, so number 19 is missing what happens if city council doesn't approve it. And so I want to add some language to that. The completed architectural drawing shall be submitted by the community development director to the city council for consideration and approval. So I actually am unsettled by how little we know about this project. Like, I want 55 plus housing in our community, and I think this is a fantastic, in a lot of ways, it's a really good location for this, but I'm very unsettled by some of the unanswered questions. And also, as a community in the past, we haven't fared so well when developers aren't as straightforward as we would like them to be. And this is actually similar to what you had agreed to on the hotel. That's where the condition actually originated. But the difference is that we didn't think it through, and there was no, you brought it to us and we said no, and then you could still build it, it kind of sounds like. So this way, for approval, protects us. You keep, so many members of this council, maybe all of them, but maybe not, have seen some really high-end apartments in the last year or so. Maybe it predates the pandemic. And sorry, I'm struggling. And so I want to make sure that because these projects are multi-generational. I mean, not literally by who's going to live there, but literally they will last past the time we are here. I feel like we owe it to the citizens of Dunwoody to make sure that we're getting the best project we can, and understanding that you don't want to invest in the renderings until you know that we're going to move forward with it. I think this is a good compromise. You can get guidance from our staff. You can talk to city council people to find out what they want. But I think it's really important that as a council, again, because this is on a really important piece of property, that we get to see what these look like. And so, you know, I once had a townhome developer say to me, "You don't trust me?" And, you know, and so I just think it's really important. It's part of our obligation to the citizens and the future of our main commercial thoroughfare that we get to see what this is going to look like before we give the final say. So that's, go ahead.
Oh, my only concern with that is this, there's a code that we have to meet. There's a PC2
right
architectural finishes and percentages of certain materials that we have to meet. If it's subject to meeting code and the PC2 requirements, then that's, I think, okay. But if it's wide open and somebody can say, well, we don't like the type of railing you use, or we don't like the color you're using, or then I don't think I could ever get this financed.
I think, Richard, are you there? I'm just having a hard time with Zoom tonight. So Richard, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, or just because you've been here the longest. I think we can work with that, right? We can work within the materials. I mean, this is exactly what we did for the hotel, correct, Richard?
Well, except that the hotel, that we presented it to you, but we didn't have the approval process.
Right, so, right. And so I still think approval. But I think we can add language that meets the, we have to have something.
What if we had the community development director approve it based on the guidelines, which is in the
And then
PC?
present it to us, which is exactly what's there already, but we're just not approving it.
But if we rezone it right now,
Right.
based on approval, and we deny it at some point later, it still has that same zoning. It doesn't revert back.
Right, it doesn't revert back. I don't want it to, I want us to end up both happy, right, John? I mean, that's my goal here. I want us to end up both happy. I just don't want to end up with ugly. And I'm going to end up with ugly on another project. So not yours, but I don't want to end up with ugly. And so, and I don't think you necessarily want to end up with ugly, but what worked in Florida isn't going to work here.
Oh, no. Well, the Florida project we showed you was merely to show you the exterior balconies and how we incorporated it into the building and the amenities package. It wasn't, the renderings we've showed you in our presentation are in compliance with the PC2 code and requirements. So I can tell you today that essentially it's going to look like that. So if you wanted to put something that will be in substantial compliance or to the renderings we showed you, subject to the PC2 code, then yeah, that I could probably live with. But my concern is if it's so open-ended that you can later say, no, we don't like this because of the railings or the color or whatever, and then we've spent $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 in drawings, we've got a problem, and I can't get it financed. I mean, no one's going to finance the deal or contribute equity to the deal if there's an open-ended cancellation at some point or withdrawal of approval.
So can you put up what it looks like now?
Sure.
Is this in this one?
I can
Paul.
put it up. So I have those saved here.
What do you think? Mary? Turn on your microphone.
I think we might be confusing color and, you know, that down in the weeds with the word cheap and like you said, ugly. I think we just don't want it to be, I'm trying to find another word.
Yeah.
Cheapened or downgraded to a shortcut version, and then the finished product looks ugly. Is that what you were getting at? Something, I think, yeah.
There's something like the balconies are required, right? Okay. So, because what, you know, a market shift could make things a lot harder, and I don't want you to cut corners. I'd rather you not build it. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I mean, the code is pretty clear, and
Right.
the design criteria in the PC2 overlay are pretty clear. And you know, I mean, we may look at this and like it, but there's maybe 10 other people who don't like it. It's very subjective, is my problem there. And for equity investors,
Right.
a lender to move forward on the project, they can't have that open-ended.
Right.
And
So,
look, we've worked with staff, we've worked with Richard and Paul and all of them really, really well. I mean, they're going to have to see all of these documents, and clearly they can share them with you. And we're open to any modifications that make the project better. But I just don't know what cheap
Right.
is. If it says you have to, you know, for instance, you can't use, I think it's stucco or ephes on the building.
right.
So we would never go to that because we're not allowed.
Okay. So council, do we like enough what we're seeing on here that we can put language
I like John's compromise of will be in substantial compliance
with what they have here?
and in accordance with PC2.
Okay.
I would be fine with that.
So can we put condition number 19 back up? So the completed architectural drawing shall be in substantial compliance with what was shown on February 22nd. Is that right? And shall be submitted by the community development director to the city council for consideration. Does that work for you, John?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, that would work.
Richard, does that work? Okay. The other, what? Okay, please. Will you wordsmith it? Sorry. Well, I mean, we can fix it right now because we don't have anywhere else to be, right? The completed architect, none of us are being paid by the hour. The completed architectural drawing, will be substantially similar to, does that work, Richard?
Yes.
John, will be substantially similar to the architectural rendering submitted on February 22nd, 2021. And in compliance with PC2 zoning, and shall be submitted by the community, shall be submitted to the community development director, who will submit to city council for consideration. We can't, not consideration. To be submitted to city council for feedback. How's that? And then, does that work?
Yeah.
Richard, does that work?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so we'll submit it. Does that work, Jim? Okay. I have a question, and which is sort of a bigger picture question, which is it, I'm going to share my screen now. Can we unshare? And I'm going to see if I can do this on a computer that's not my own. So when I look at, okay, oops, I forgot to hit the share screen button. Okay, share screen. Okay, so when I look at active senior living, which is independent living, age-restricted apartments, they have amenities. And so, that's actually not what I'm worried about. So these are the services that they can find. that you can get if you move in there. Okay. The breakfast, they have yoga classes, they have outings and social hours. Do you intend to have a concierge or some other type of programming and person at this complex?
Yes, most definitely. There'll be a concierge and there'll be community activities and that we would normally do in any of our Class A product.
Okay.
You know, one
So
of the reasons to have the demonstration kitchen is to have chefs come in and do demonstrations. I mean, and for so those are the type of things that we would expect.
right. So this is one that's opening in Forsyth County at Halcyon. And so you intend to be very similar to this?
Yep, I'm
Okay.
familiar with the project.
You are?
Yeah. Part of our due diligence is to review what everybody else is doing, right?
Mhm.
And from my standpoint, I want to see what everybody else is doing and then do them one better.
So one of my concerns is that I'm not, I wonder if you've done, you talked about, doing market studies to see what amenities, whether it's shuffleboard or whatever. So when you look at the screen I'm on now, which is way up in North Metro, look at the rents that they're getting for these projects. And I'm curious if you have delved into the market enough to know that there's actually demand for this product in Dunwoody. I mean, in Perimeter. In Dunwoody, I know there's demand. And Perimeter is Dunwoody, but I'm a little, I want to make sure that you're, to Tom's point a little bit, and to other points we've talked to you about, I don't want you to build this if this is not what you really want to build.
Yeah,
I
no.
you own the property already, and I understand that I actually am pretty convinced that we have enough traditional market multifamily housing in the area and beyond in Dunwoody. And so, but you own this property and you want to build on it because a hotel is not particularly viable. I think I need to know that you're convinced this is something you really want to do.
Well, we wouldn't be here if we didn't think it was viable. I will tell you in our due diligence, what we found is if you go to the Census Bureau, the population, and they start at 65, but we can extrapolate to 55. We can back that up. That population is set to double in the next 10 or 15 years. That is the only segment of the population that grows that much. So I'm going to tell you that in the next 5, 6, 7 years, this product is going to be in so much demand that I don't have any question that it's viable. And we wouldn't be here doing this. If we didn't think it was viable, we'd just wait for the hotel. I mean, if we had to wait 4 or 5 years, but we think this is very viable and get started this year, as opposed to having an empty lot with an empty former bank building for a number of years. So yeah, I'm very excited about doing this. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
And will you bring in I know you said you do it for other properties, but are you committed to programming this one differently as needed with the population that you're trying to attract or that we will end up with? So for example, are you going to look for people? I know I'm way in the weeds here, but you're going to have to, I'm a little unsettled.
Okay.
But there's a big difference in a complex where everyone gets up and goes to work in a non-pandemic world and what residents want and need than a place where you're going to have a fair number of retirees who are there to do more than just sleep.
Right. Well, that's why we have the expanded amenities areas, right?
Okay.
We have the outdoor areas, we have the bocce ball, we have the pool area, we have the outdoor dining area. We have the amenity of the retail, right? So now they can walk over there and access the restaurants. The mall's right across the street. I mean, you have so much in that vicinity to keep people active and entertained that, to your point, this is the perfect spot for this.
Right. And then we haven't spent a lot of time talking about the commercial space, because we essentially had approved it. But do you foresee the potential of like a convenience store market or anything in that space?
Yeah,
I don't know
I'm sorry.
I don't know where you are with leasing.
Yeah, so before the pandemic hit, we had 2 leases signed for the property. Those leases are still in place. In the last, I'd say 4 weeks, we have had a dramatic increase now since the numbers are coming down from COVID cases, the vaccine has been distributed. We have seen a dramatic increase in interest. Next week, we've got 3 site tours on the property, which is 3 more than we've had in 8 months. So, and one of the other things is, as you know, there was a competing project down the street, which now is not happening. And many of those tenants,
sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And many of those tenants have called us. So, in the last 3 or 4 weeks. So the interest in the retail has dramatically picked up. There are, like I said, there's 3 site tours next week. And we already have 2 leases signed, and we have an LOI that's close to completion for a seafood restaurant there. And we feel pretty good about it.
And the convenience factor, like with a market or something for the residents, or you don't?
Yeah, we've looked at that. So I think you need something like, if you're familiar with Savvy.
Yeah,
yeah. So I think that makes a lot of sense there.
All right. Joe, did you have a question or no? Okay. All right, I need to add one more condition. So if you could put the conditions back up, please. Whoever.
Give me just a second.
That's fine. So I think it would probably have to be the last condition at this point. So a condition number 25 would be the construction. How do we define it, Richard? Construction. A land disturbance permit must be pulled within 24 months, or the zoning reverts. Is that how we usually write it, Richard?
We don't write it that it reverts, because it's illegal as far as we're concerned. So,
okay, so we just write that land disturbance permit must be pulled. So John, do you think you can do it in 18 months, or you think you need 24?
No, I think 2 years is probably a good timeline. I can live with that.
But you said you thought you'd start this year. Is that not the land disturbance permit?
That could be the land disturbance permit, yeah. But I mean, we don't want to get locked into a place where we're rushing.
Right.
So I have very high confidence that we get this done with this zoning change. But we need the appropriate time. Now, what you can rely on is this: we own the land. It's not making us any money today. We're going to move as fast as we possibly can.
And you live in Dunwoody, and so you're giving us your word this is still going to be faster than a hotel.
I live in Atlanta.
I live in Atlanta.
But I'm hometown, so I'm associated with this project. I'm going to tell you that this gets done way faster than a hotel, no question.
Are you going to start the commercial first or the multifamily first?
No, the multifamily first. We've looked at the staging of the construction, and because of where the parking deck is located, the multifamily would have to go first, which is okay because that doesn't require a leasing threshold. To do retail, you have to have a certain amount pre-leased. In multifamily, you don't.
Okay.
You can get that financed much quicker.
All right. So do you agree to whatever, how do we word that, Richard? Just that condition 25 would be that the land disturbance permit must be told within 2 years?
Yes.
Yes, okay, that's number 25. And then the final thing is, it's really for Richard or someone on your staff. When we look at, when we were talking about pervious and impervious, and we were talking about that now some of our path is on their property, have we calculated what impact that's had?
So I think Laurel had actually pulled a calculation for the right of way, because we were curious about that too. If we make their project so much worse, if we can isolate their impacts, and that was about 2 percentage points by us requesting these additional things of them. I think that came out about 2 percentage points.
And it looks like, John, that y'all shrunk your commercial footprint between the last, is that right, square footage wise?
We did, to allow for more open area.
Okay. Can't get you to shrink it a little more?
Be tough. Well, I'm all for, look, I think I mentioned early on, I really feel like what happens at city council is really a collaborative effort to try to get to the best possible site plan we can. And we have looked at this and looked, which is why we asked for the deferment on February 8th. So that we could spend the time to find every single inch we possibly could. We really did.
John, do y'all normally keep your properties, or do you sell them to an outside company?
We do either. It just depends.
And so I circle back to the age restricted part. And I'm wondering if we don't need a 2-week deferral to make sure we understand that that's locked in.
Well, it's a zoning condition, so it's not going to change.
Mayor, if I could speak to that.
Yes.
Mayor, I would like to be assured. I think that we can probably do this. Was not privy to not having HUD financing, because HUD financing would lock in that all of that. My question is going to be, I would imagine that we would adopt all the HUD rules for that to protect the city in its zoning for the age restricted, but I have to vet that before I can tell you that for sure.
All right. So that sounds like we need more time, which is only, can we get that done in 2 weeks?
Yes, ma'am. I think I can get it done in 2 or 3 days.
Okay, well, we don't come back for 2 weeks. Go ahead, John.
I have a question for the developer and or staff. Is the apartment complex going to be constructed out of steel and concrete, or are we going to be using stick construction?
Well, we've looked at that. Well, because it's higher than 5 stories, then it has to go to, depending on, it could be a staggered height or, but it's either going to be metal structural stud or concrete, or a combination of both.
Okay, I just want to make sure that you're aware that we passed an ordinance for enhanced fire protection for new apartment or apartment condominium buildings a few years back. I wanted to make sure that you're aware of that. That's section 8-91 in our code. If it's not steel and concrete, I'm sure there's a number of requirements that we put in place. So I just wasn't sure what you were doing or what your intentions were in that realm.
No, we're aware of that, which is why we're sticking to the metal and the concrete.
All right, awesome. So you're thinking of metal and concrete then?
Yes, that's correct.
Again, it's thinking of senior building. I just want to make sure that we're a safe building. So thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. So I think we have to defer to get the legality stuff of the 55 plus, but.
Well, could we approve conditioned upon that language?
I think, right, I think we're kind of going to have to come back. Sorry. We could, I mean, if council's amenable, we could call a meeting if a week is going to make a difference to you. Otherwise, my preference is just to bring it back in 2 weeks, just to do, I mean, that would be the only thing I think left, unless some other questions need to be answered.
And
And
I'm
at that time, they can put all the required the documents they
Right,
provided
that you
us.
provided could
into
then
the
be in the
packet officially.
presentation. Right, and the updated conditions.
But I'm also fine for a special called meeting just to do that. So.
Right.
And
So,
I'm sorry, my reception broke up a little bit. I only caught part of what
So
Mr.
we're
Riley said.
Bill is saying that he wasn't aware that you weren't getting HUD financing. And so we need to research the language that protects the city as well. This is our first large housing project. Well, I guess we did the condos, never mind. But it's our first age restricted thing we've done.
Mhm.
And so I think that we want to do it right. I hope 2 weeks won't make such a big difference, and we can just have I was a little uncomfortable already that your presentation wasn't in our packet that was released ahead of time. And then we can update the conditions, get the language we need for the 55 plus, and vote on it in 2 weeks. Go ahead, Tom.
And could we also, do we know the answer to this? We might already know it, but I don't know with the uncertainty with the HUD financing. Are they still required to report to HUD? As far as how do we ensure or audit the fact that they're abiding by the, what is it, 80% age restriction? Is that something that the city is going to have to track? Is that something that's done through HUD? Do we know that?
I think the city would have to do it if he's not using HUD financing.
Then I would want to make sure that we clarified
Right.
how that was going to be reported and maintained.
Enforced.
I guess and I've said this, I guess, for the second meeting now, I just need to understand how this works and how it is tracked, and to make sure that we are not making ourselves liable by approving age-restricted housing in the city of Dunwoody. And I still have all those questions. So I would like to defer it, and I would like the staff and whoever to tell us how it works and how, if we approve it, that we know it's going to be age-restricted housing.
Yeah, and Bill and Laurel, I guess in tandem with this, just a quick Google sitting right here, that Housing for Older Persons Act 1995, that looks like it's a legal document that gives cities protection, but I didn't, because I was listening, I didn't read it. It just popped up and I copied it down. But it's called HOPA, Housing for Older Persons Act 1995.
Right. All of the age restricted housing like this is all governed by federal law.
Right.
So that whoever is basically weeding out who can rent and who can't is not subject to a Fair Housing Act complaint.
Hey, Lynn, real quick. Yeah, wherever that is, whatever that was just spoken, I'd like to have that in writing inside this packet somewhere, whether it's in the zoning that refers to that.
All right, we're going to continue on with the agenda unless anybody has other questions. No, right, well, we need, right, yes. I mean, does anybody have any other further questions? I think there was some consensus around the last. Yes, Pam, go ahead.
I make a motion to defer until the next meeting, which is in 2 weeks, which is what, March 2nd?
March 8th.
March 8th. March 8th.
My birthday. Who seconded? I'm sorry, we were talking about birthdays. John. All right, so that a deferral on number 6 was moved by Pam, second by John. Any further discussion or questions? It was a deferral to March 8th. Seeing none, I call for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, the motion to defer passes unanimously. Sharon, when you're ready, we are ready for number 7.
Thank you all. Have a good.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
We'll see you on March 8th.
Mhm. We still have to do, right, we still have to do all of them.
Yes.
Sharon, when you're ready.
An ordinance to amend the City of Dunwoody zoning classification and map for zoning conditions of lot parcel number 18-347-01013, 18-347-01021, and 18-347-01028 in consideration of zoning case RZ 20-03 for 84, 130, and 140 Perimeter Center East, Dunwoody, Georgia 30346.
Move to defer until March 8th.
Second.
That was moved by Pam, second by John, deferral till March 8th. Any further discussion? I would just ask that the numbers reflect the current reality. If possible, maybe it's not, but if we're allowed to update it, then please do. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I call the question. All in support of the deferral signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, that passes unanimously. Sharon, whenever you're ready for the next one.
In order to amend the City of Dunwoody zoning classification and map for zoning conditions of lot parcel number 18-347-01013, 18-347-01021, and 18-347-01028 in consideration of zoning case RZ 20-03 for 84, 130, and 140 Perimeter Center East, Dunwoody, Georgia 30346.
Move to approve, move to defer until March 8th.
Second.
Moved by Pam, second by John. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries unanimously.
An ordinance to amend the City of Dunwoody zoning classification and map for zoning conditions of lot parcel number 18-347-01013, 18-347-01021, and 18-347-01028 in consideration of zoning case RZ 20-03 for 84, 130, and 140 Perimeter Center East, Dunwoody, Georgia 30346.
Move to defer until March 8th.
Second.
Moved by Pam, second by John. Any further discussion? Seeing none, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sharon, that passes unanimously.
An ordinance to amend the City of Dunwoody zoning classification and map for zoning conditions of lot parcel number 18-347-01013, 18-347-01021, and 18-347-01028 in consideration of zoning case RZ 20-03 for 84, 130, and 140 Perimeter Center East, Dunwoody, Georgia 30346.
Move to defer until March 8th.
Second.
Moved by Pam, second by John. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sharon, that passes unanimously.
Mayor, the next item, item number 8, is a resolution supporting the City of Dunwoody, Georgia's submission of an application for the Atlanta Regional Commission's 2021 Community Development Assistance Program. Michael Starling.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So tonight I'm presenting a resolution of support for an application for the Atlanta Regional Commission's Community Development Assistance Program. This annual program from ARC provides direct assistance to local governments focused on a specific issue of concern. The program combines ARC's expertise and experience with planning, along with a small group of partners that they bring in, including Georgia Tech, the Urban Land Institute, and others, depending on what the application entails. The city is jointly applying with the Perimeter CID and the Dunwoody Development Authority on this application, and any costs associated with this program will be paid for by them, not the city. So this has not hit our budget at all. Our application is asking for assistance to create a blueprint for future economic growth in the perimeter market. I think the previous conversation about 84 and some of the things that we want to see in perimeter, we believe that this application in this program, if we receive it, would help all of us sort of get on the same page with what kind of growth we want to see in perimeter. This is designed to be a two-part program. First is a technical analysis by ARC on future development patterns for areas like perimeter and Dunwoody. Look at our recent developments, look at our existing entitlements. The second is a high-level discussion between the leadership of Dunwoody, the City Council, Planning Commission, Development Authority, amongst others, and other stakeholders like property owners about what we hope to see happen in the market over the next 2 decades. Although this is not a zoning project itself, it could lead to changes in our existing zoning overlay depending on the outcomes of the conversation. Projects will be announced this summer by ARC, and work will begin in the fall, and it usually takes 9 to 12 months for the program. I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
Anybody have any questions? Joe?
Hey, Michael, how about, are we coordinating this with Sandy Springs and Brookhaven?
We will include that. I'm not sure. We've talked to the PCID. Obviously, they are partners with us, and we will want to look at what's happening in those 2 markets. Obviously, you know, Dunwoody is not alone in this. I'm not sure if we would include them as full partners. Once you get out to the entire perimeter center market, I'm not sure that's going to give us the kind of detail we need, but certainly we're going to look at the entire market as we go through the program.
It's so holistic.
Sure, absolutely.
It's come over. They don't realize what city they're in or county. It's perimeter.
Absolutely.
Now, you mentioned in your staff memo of no dime on our side, but you mentioned the city's development authority may be on the hook for some funding. Do you know what that would look like?
So at the last meeting, they approved a not to exceed $8,000 as our part. And I think PCID will do something similar. This is typically not a very expensive program, but if they have to spend some money, obviously they want to, you know, be reimbursed for that. So that will be taken care of by the Development Authority and the CID.
All right. If it had a couple more zeros, I'd be concerned.
Yes. Yeah. It's a very small amount of money.
All right. Thanks.
Yep.
Anybody else have questions?
I do.
Okay, Stacy, go ahead.
I can read that it's going to be a blueprint for future economic growth in the perimeter market. What is that report actually going to look like? Like, what information do we hope to gain from that? I guess I just don't understand what the final product is going to look like.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a report of some sort. We will have to talk to them about what that is. And I think some of it's going to depend on what you want to see out of it as well. I think the real benefit of this will be for all of us to talk about the kinds of growth we want to see. And I think the conversation, you know, you've had around the 84 project tonight is a perfect example. What is it that we are comfortable with? What is it that the community's comfortable with? And what kind of growth do our stakeholders, meaning our property owners, see coming? And how do we get on the same page on the kinds of development we want to see? Again, this is not zoning. It's not going to set anything in stone, but it will look at our existing zoning to see if it's something we want to keep.
So when you say like what we want to see, so then how do they know what we want to see? Like, how does that input get put into the report?
Well, I mean, the program is not completely figured out, right? If we get chosen for this, ARC and their partners will come in. We've met with them already. We've told them what our issues are and what we think we want, but obviously you will have input on that. I think it's going to be about, the conversation is going to be around density and uses. You know, is senior living something we want? Is more housing something we want? And then how do we go about getting that kind of development? I think one of the things we lack is a real vision for what Perimeter Center wants to be. I'm not sure we're all on the same page. And I think that's what this program could help us do. And having somebody like ARC bring in partners, they're third parties, right? They don't have a dog in the hunt, so to speak, to help us work through those issues and look into the future, I think would be very beneficial for staff
Thank
as
you.
well as leadership.
Thank you. That actually cleared up the words on that page to.
Anybody else? Nope.
I just want to comment. Yeah, Michael, I appreciate you presenting this to us because this is exactly what I think we've been needing to do for a while. I think this is very important, getting us all on the same page, deciding exactly what our vision is, because I believe there's some ambiguity in what we want to see in the Perimeter Center. And certainly the events of the past year may have shifted that anyway. So it's a good time to revisit that and decide what the future of that area is. So I think this is going to be very valuable for the city. I do have one question. I know we've also had conversations about conducting, for lack of a better term, an economic summit. Would this be a part of that? Would we have to wait until the ARC program kicks in, or could we get that ball rolling?
Yeah, I think we will start that ball rolling. I think there's a conversation we can have locally, but I think that conversation could lead into this conversation. And I think be the basis for some of the work that ARC helps us through. But no, I don't think we can wait. We should not wait to have that economic, development discussion amongst ourselves.
And I agree with that. I think that discussion would probably form a terrific foundation for this ARC program. So thank you very much.
Move to approve.
Moved by John. Second by Jim. Any further discussions? Seeing none, I hope I see none. Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Seeing none, that passes unanimously, Sharon.
Thank you.
And Sharon, I think I can go ahead and introduce the next item because it's not a voting item. Michael Smith, you're on for a discussion of speed limit policy.
Okay, Councilman Seconder asked to have a discussion on speed limit policy, and I've put together in the memo in the packet a little bit of background on the state and national guidance on this. All the streets in Dunwoody except for the access roads along 285 and Peachtree Industrial are local roads. So the city has the ability to set those speed limits. But the catch is that under state law, to be able to use radar detection for enforcement, the state has to approve a radar permit for the city. And that goes through the Department of Public Safety. They rely on Georgia DOT to evaluate the engineering study that's required to justify the speed limit. And so in essence, to run radar for enforcement on any road in the city, that has to be approved by DOT. And the state, has certain things that they look at when they do that. Both the state law and national policy reference the need to do an engineering study and then look at characteristics of the roadway, the users of the roadway, the prevailing speed. And so, that's the process we've used, and we've worked with GDOT. The permit's approved every 3 years, the radar permit for the city. That's submitted by the police department. Any changes that are made to that as far as speed limits go, we've worked with GDOT, and sometimes they approve those requests and sometimes they don't, just based on their evaluation. But that's how the process works, and I'll stop there for discussion.
Joe, do you want to start?
Sure, thanks. So I really thank you, Michael, for that presentation. And what I wanted to just kind of level set of where we are and just ask for the council consideration as a discussion, whether Michael just mentioned some of the things of putting that in a one-stop shop policy of us drafting a policy, putting all the nuts and bolts of how it works, how things happen, how the inputs, process, and output happen, write that in a policy as a takeaway, defining the process, defining when and if council should be involved along that process. And so with the goal of the outcome, my minimum ask of my members on council sitting up there today is that we would go forward evaluating what that policy looks like, define a policy, and present it back to council for potential adoption. That's my ask to the folks on council, rather than go into the nuts and bolts of what that policy looks like today. Just to say, should we undertake that, to look at that? Some of the things, and I'll also go just so kind of take it up another notch, is that some cities do have written policies. Chamberley has a written policy. It's formalized and so on, that council gets to see. A year ago, Sandy Springs presented their speed study back to their council up and down, and they made some modifications with their city spring center and so on. So it did get to council at that level. And also, I know that we want to re-engineer our streets so it's safe, and the end state is it's safe for kids and parents and families and so on, for all users of the road. But we also say, what can we do today in an all of the above fashion, without spending millions of dollars? What can we do today? There are studies out there today that have said, even by changing the posted sign limit, the limit on a sign, without changing the characteristics of the roadway, there will be a reduction in speed across the total numbers. So there are studies showing that. So anyhow, going back to the idea of having a policy of looking at what triggers changes, what would trigger a change ever in City of Dunwoody to a speed limit, so we understand that, where that comes from, i.e. crashes, change in use, the design characteristics of the roadway, citizen input or council, understanding who vets it and when in that process. So I'd like to be able to just kind of formulate that, put that out there over the next few months with staff, and offer the advice of other folks we have here in City of Dunwoody. George, we have folks that are knowledgeable, and other people that are within the region and state that work within transportation safety and understanding what other cities do and how they do that. So that's where I came from, and that's why I thank Michael for doing the introduction here, and just see what you all think about that.
Does anybody have anything to add or questions to ask? John, I see you.
Yeah, I guess where I'm at on this is I really want the lowest speed limit that's enforceable. And I think that's what I thought we had currently. Is it not, Michael? I mean, how does that work? What are we allowed to, besides setting the policy up or down? But right now, do we have the lowest speeds possible that are enforceable as per state certificate?
I would say in general, we do. I mean, we've had cases where we've asked the state to, well, for example, Perimeter Center East at one time was 35 miles an hour. We asked the state to reduce it to 25. They came back and said we could reduce it to 30. So that's what we did. So from the standpoint of having speeds that can be approved for radar permit enforcement, I'd say in general, we have speed. I think there's cases here and there where we could incrementally look to get the state to reduce the speeds. But I think in general, I think most of our roads are neighborhood roads, and other roads are 25 miles an hour. We have a few 35 and 140 and 145, I think. So I'd say in general that the speeds are close to as low as the state's going to approve at this point. And we'd have to look at changing the characteristics of the roadway to really make any other big changes that the state would approve.
And I know that a lot of the recommendations are based on the municipal transportation guidelines. And I think with speed limits, we're also talking about safety, right? Pedestrian safety, bike safety, crosswalk safety. I'm not sure we have a really good core set of requirements. The conversation I was in with somebody today regarding stop bars. Are stop bars required? Not required. There's no uniformity within the city limits anywhere. And if it's, I don't know if it's in the manual or not in the manual, but it's not consistent. And I'd love to find ways, little incremental things that would make it safer for pedestrians, for traffic, for bicyclists, all the way around. And I'd like that to be part of this policy as well. If we're looking at how to do this, I'd like it to be a uniform across the board look at how we're doing everything. That's my only comment.
Anyone else? Jim?
Just a quick comment. I mean, I pretty much agree with everything John just said. The flip side is, you know, personally, this is not something I want to spend a lot of time getting into the weeds on. And an example that was brought up in the discussion was, okay, Austin's school zone moved because Austin moved a half mile down the road. Well, great. You know, that just happened between, you know, the change in the school zone and the speed limits associated with that just happened probably as part of a, you know, working it out between the school system and Public Works. And that just happened, and I didn't have to know anything about it, and I'm quite happy with that. I don't want to have to know about that. That's why we have, you know, competent people like Michael Smith working for us here at the city, and so we don't have to get into that detail. So I just wanted to bring that up. I mean, I'm just not sure where we're trying to get with this that we don't have already. I mean, if you've got specific examples of where you think the speed limits are too high, that we ought to reduce them, I'm all ears. But I just don't know where we're going with this, to be quite honest.
To that, yeah. Michael, I'm intrigued with the perimeter center east ask from 35 down to 25, and we settled at 30. Why did you ask? Like, what precipitated the ask to GDOT for that?
That one was, we had a few requests from residents that lived in that area, and then I think it got to the council, and the council asked us to look into it. I mean, yeah, the few changes that we've made over the years have generally come from citizen and council requests. There's, you know, staff hasn't really initiated on its own any changes to the speed limit.
Okay, so we have a process that, yeah, okay, thank you.
Tom?
I just had a question. It's more of a curiosity. One of the things in your memo, I just wanted to get some clarification on the pacing. I guess the 85th percentile kind of sets the speed. I mean, I think most people in this area in particular have a pretty heavy foot. Is that saying that the state allows drivers to determine what the speed is, regardless of whether that is the most appropriate speed for a particular road?
Yeah, the idea with the pace of speed is that if you arbitrarily set the speed limit too low, and the characteristic, you know, drivers tend to gauge how fast to drive, whether their judgment is good or not. They take their cues from the roadway itself and the feel and environment of the roadway. And so the idea is that, you know, however you define the pace, whether it's the 85th percentile or the average speed or whatever, that, you know, if you set the speed limit much different from the speed that people feel comfortable driving on that roadway, that it's not really going to change behavior. They're going to continue to drive the speed that they feel comfortable on that roadway. And I mean, you see that a little bit with our traffic calming program. All those streets are posted at 25 miles an hour, but in some cases, we have to install physical traffic calming to bring the speeds down, because people aren't driving 25 miles an hour, even though that's the posted speed limit. So that's the idea behind pace of speed. Historically, I think the 85th percentile speed has been what's the measure that's been used to define that. I think there's some flexibility. There's some discussions at the national level that may, in the near future, there may be some more flexibility, and people may start looking at other ways to define that pace of traffic other than just the 85th percentile. But I think historically, that's what GDOT has looked at and as part of their evaluation.
Okay, thank you. And you kind of helped me segue into my next point a little bit when you talked about how the roads are designed, because I think that's an important factor in speed as well, is the engineering of roads. You know, as we know, the roads tend to be engineered for cars as opposed to other modes of transportation. And so, you know, I know we have our complete streets policy, and I know we look at doing things to help control speed. As we do that, I don't know if this kind of dovetails into that, as we have projects that come along, and I'll just use the multi-use trail on Mount Vernon as an example. I'm not saying that we need to do anything there specifically or not, but projects that specifically change the characteristics of an area, adding pedestrian and bike facilities, or development that we know will have, you know, a park or an amenity that's going to attract more people. I think it would be a good idea to have an automatic trigger to review the speed in those situations. And perhaps that could be rolled into a policy as well, just to make sure that the existing speed is appropriate for what the new conditions of that area will be.
Yes, one of the things in some of the national guidance that it references specifically, you know, when you have a project or a development or something that, you know, alters the characteristics of the roadway, then that's a time when you should reevaluate the speed limit.
So in other words, we basically already do everything, you know, like you just stated, Michael, plus if a citizen comes to us and then we ask you to look into a certain street and speed, you do that. So I guess I'm going with what is our real ask here to do different. I guess is that Joe's? I guess that would be for Joe. Yeah.
Yes, it would be for Joe, but can I say something first?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, we can. So a couple things. One is back to John's question about the lowest speed limit possible. Is it possible for us to know that information? Like, I don't want to make, like, is there a way to put in our work plan that we're going to get that information? I'd like to know where we're above maybe the minimum of enforceable speed, but more complex than that. You know, Ashford, Dunwoody, and Mount Vernon, but the small neighborhood streets, are we 25 in all of those? Are there neighborhood streets that are above 25? I'd like to make sure that they're not. There's probably not, but
Yeah, I don't know of any neighborhood streets that are above 25. And 25 is the lowest that I think the state would approve for any road.
when we asked them to lower the speed limit around in Meadow Lake, they said no, right?
Yeah, there we asked to create a school zone so that you could do enforcement for 1 mile over, and they denied that.
Right. Is there an appeals process? Just thinking off the top of my head, sorry.
Not a formal appeals process. After the last round that we sent to the state, I had a good conversation with one of the district traffic engineers, and I think, like I said, I think there's some opportunities to go back on a few that we've looked at and give them more information and try, you know, we may not get from 35 to 25, but we can maybe get from 35 to 30. You know, that's where I say, I think there's room in some cases to get some incremental reductions. And so, I mean, specifically the two that I know of that we submitted recently were Ashford, Dunwoody, to reduce it from 45 to 35, and Chamberley, Dunwoody in the village to go from 35 to 25. And those were both denied, but I think we can go back and maybe, instead of getting it 10 miles an hour down, we could get it 5 miles an hour down.
Yeah, that would be a good incremental step. I think that one of the questions here, and Joe can address it, I guess, is this a policy change we need or a new policy created, or is this a part of a process that we already do that council just needs to be made aware of? So we already have sort of the process where either something triggers it, like the village changes, I think is what triggered it for Chamberley Dunwoody, or citizen complaints on Ashford Dunwoody. So what, and then, but, you know, do you automatically, like when we're doing an intersection improvement project or paving or sidewalks, do we automatically look at the speed limits or should we automatically look at the speed limits as part of that process? Michael, that was for you.
You're asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking
Okay.
you, is rather
Yeah.
than a policy, is this a procedure?
I think the,
It's a long
yes,
time.
I don't know, from a policy standpoint, we're kind of bound by what the state and federal guidelines are. I think the policy direction from the council could be, and I think we already know this, is that, you know, whenever we have the opportunity to reduce speeds, we should look at that. And particularly like when we do a project, like when we do Chamberley Dunwoody in the village, where you're trying to create a, you know, pedestrian and bicycle environment in kind of a downtown type area, that's definitely one that should be part of the process of that project, is trying to look at reducing that speed limit. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. I'm just, yes, Joe, go ahead.
Just, I appreciate everyone's input and so on, but my initial ask was that we develop a written policy that defines the process. So if we have a one-stop shop, honestly, I did not know until a few minutes ago that permits are approved every 3 years submitted by the police. I just didn't see that on the memo. Don't know where we have it in one-stop shop to refer to that. Let me take it up another higher level for the folks sitting on council. When I'm knocking on doors, campaigning, going on Happy Hollow or Tilly Mill or Peeler or North Beach or wherever, up and down on Chamberley, everybody who lives on every one of those roads, one of the top issues was speeding and not feeling safe for their children to play in their yards. And so I have to say, what can I do on council is adopt potential policies. And that's what I'm asking the council to revisit, that we put something together in paper, that we take some real stepwise procedure and look at what Atlanta did last year, where they revisited everything. They brought in a Georgia Tech PhD from CDC that works in injury prevention to try to develop these systemic, holistic policies here. We also can look at other standards other than MUTCD, which would be legally potentially used as speed studies, that we could put an argument together for GDOT to apply different measures, NACTO guidelines. There's other standards other than MUTCD. All these things could be vetted out during a process, during a procedure where we bring in a few subject matter experts, some other people in the public to vet that and to put that in that policy. So we could think out of the box. And I'll also say, you will find when Sandy Springs reduces speed limit on Johnson Ferry, you know, Mountain Vernon changes its name to Johnson Ferry as you cross Roswell Road. It was 35. All of a sudden one day there were signs posted 25. And there's no change in the characteristics or nothing. And I did an open records request, but I was not able to get the information from Sandy Springs if they submitted that to GDOT for their approval or not for radar. And the other idea is, what are the other enforcement measures without radar that is available for Georgia law enforcement? Can they use timers? Can they pace people? What are other mechanisms other than radar that we can use for enforcement for speed limits? And I guarantee, even though GDOT says it's only lowest is 25 in all of Georgia at every city, I guarantee you will find 15 mile an hour and 20 mile an hour posted speed limits on public roads in the state of Georgia. And that local municipality made a decision to post that at there to give the drivers a signal to say, we're really going to make this pedestrian friendly and family friendly and usable for the people on the road. So I just think that there's other ideas that we could think out of the boxes out there. I just want to try to see is what we can do. Yes, we want to re-engineer and do traffic calming and so on, which is millions and millions or tens of millions of dollars throughout the whole city. I know I want to get to there. So I just hope that we could sit back and think about putting something to paper. Thank you all.
So when is our transportation plan updated?
The last update was in 2017, so
This year, or is it 5 years or 10?
it can be whatever the council wants it to be, but typically somewhere 5-year minimum, 10-year maximum, probably.
I think I guess we can talk about it at the retreat. Actually, Eric, it'd be a good thing to talk about at the retreat. And I think this actually would dovetail nicely with a transportation plan discussion of that. So I think that works well, fits with that because it's all part and parcel of the same thing. So we have the retreat in just a few weeks. And so we will put all this on there. How's that? So,
If I may, I'd like to see, some of these alternate ways that Joe's talking about, if we could just get some examples of that we didn't have in this discussion, as part of that discussion. I mean, I think in general, council's supportive of lower speed limits, Joe, but, I'm still trying to figure out what the policy document does for us that we don't have already. Because we're already taking, where we can, we're taking steps to reduce speed limits. We've talked about a few specific examples. I just don't see that as something that we need a big policy document about if we're already doing it. But if there's parts of this that we can use, if there's some way we can use a policy document to get to where we can do these lower speed limits where it makes sense, then great. But I just need to have a little bit more understanding of, why we're creating an extra bureaucratic step.
But that being said, if staff has the ability to go through and look at the speed limits in the entire city, map it all out, and make sure that we are currently at the lowest speed limit that's enforceable by state law, then that would be something we should see. And if there's any reason that there's a street that's above the minimum that could be lowered, that would be enforceable, please bring that to us and we'll take a look at that too. So.
We can do that.
I think it fits. Go ahead, Joe.
One last item too. And I'd like to see if the council would agree that there's a point in time that we would be involved. When do we find out? When do we learn that we're looking for a speed study in a certain area? When we're submitting it? When does council get vetted on that? And yes, speed limits, Ashford Center Parkway, it was changed from 25 to 30. So there was an increase in the speed limit. I wasn't on council at the time. And I don't know if council was sought for advice for Ashford Center Parkway for that raising of that speed limit.
Okay, those are good questions and we'll get back. We'll work on it. We're not going to solve this overnight. Go ahead, John. Did you have something?
No, I was just going to, basically what Joe is saying is that council is the one who gives the guidance to staff and staff follows. So, I mean, we're looking for the documentation and the data so that we can make educated decisions and help guide staff make the right decisions.
Yes.
I mean, it's a data question. It's what's enforceable. And if there are streets that are not on the radar list that are problematic, then we can add those too. But it's a data question that we don't have the information. And once the information can be analyzed by council, that information can go back to staff to make appropriate changes.
Yeah, I think we're at a good starting point of that. And I think so much of what's initiated so far in the history of the city has been initiated by council when citizens come to us. So I think I don't know that we've done a speed audit, so to speak. And so, or at least not in a lot of years. And so, but I think we have a good starting point with this discussion. Anybody else? I can't see.
Oh,
Tom.
Last thing. I'm
Okay.
gonna get one off with Michael and talk about some other non-MUTCD and put in touch with some of the references that I was given. I'll just send Michael a note and get with him.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think it fits in with the transportation plan process too. All right. That's it with the agenda. Public comments. We have no public left at City Hall. We actually had a little bit. I see a hand. Ginger, if you want to.
Kate Edmonds, you should be able to unmute yourself and speak at this time.
Hello, can you hear me? This is Kate.
Hi, Kate. Can you speak up a little bit?
Sure, I can try. Is that better?
That is. Thank you.
Okay. Well, my name is Kate Edmonds. I've been a resident of Dunwoody for 6 years. And particularly over the past year when I've been at home, you know, a lot more as we all have, and hearing the chainsaws going constantly during the day, I've just become really concerned about the loss of the urban canopy in Dunwoody. And I've been thinking about ways and hoping that Dunwoody, you know, that the city can take steps to protect the existing urban canopy and start to build back some of what has been diminished. And I've sent you guys an email, and I know Joe, you know, I've talked to Joe, and Jim Richeter also responded to the email with some comments too. And you know, Lynn, you and I talked a couple weeks ago when we were talking about that economic committee as well. And also, Lynn, I heard you today talk about, which was great, thinking about making decisions for the city which will improve it for the next generation and generations to come, and not just for us. And I think that probably a lot of the council has a similar aspiration. So, you know, what I'm observing right now is, and with our aging tree population, is that in 30 years, we won't have a canopy. So, you know, I think taking actions now is what we could do to help the future. And so I had a couple ideas of steps to take. You know, one is a front yard tree planting program, maybe like with Trees Atlanta, their Neighborhoods program, or some other way. Another idea is, you know, I know we plant trees on MLK in a partnership with Trees Atlanta, and I think I saw, you know, I don't know if there's a lot of opportunity now at Brook Run, and maybe moving some of that into the neighborhoods and into front yards and those resources, rather than, I mean, I think I saw a bunch of trees kind of crammed together in Brook Run. I'm not sure if that was the planting this year, but it seems like if we're using our resources to spread them out and have them have the chance to become a big canopy tree. And then also potentially increasing regulations on commercial developers, tree removal, and then a longer term plan, but maybe start taking steps towards taking steps towards private home owner restrictions on removals. I know a lot of our neighboring cities have restrictions, you know, extensive or small, but taking steps in that direction, I think, could be powerful too. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
If anyone else would like to speak.
There's another hand.
Ryan Esslinger. I apologize if I said your name wrong. You can unmute and you should have the ability to talk.
Hi, Ryan. You have 3 minutes. Ryan, we show you unmuted, but we cannot hear you. Ginger, can you see? If
Ryan Esslinger. I apologize if I'm saying your name wrong, but you should be able to unmute and speak.
It looks like he is unmuted.
Ryan, are you able to talk at this time?
We're sorry, but we can't hear you. Do you want to type it in the chat? Which actually, I don't see a chat on ours.
He could send it to public.comment@dunwoodyga.gov and I could forward it to the council members if you'd like.
Yes, Ryan, you know how to reach us, so I'm sorry, but we could not hear you. Technology is failing a year into the pandemic. All right, anybody else? Ginger?
If you would like to speak in public comment, please raise your hand in the Zoom application. I see no hands raised at this time.
Thank you. I think it's city manager comments.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And earlier this evening, I actually sent you a copy of the city manager's report along with the finance documents for January. I'll go through a couple of the highlights really quick. Public Works, we have the Peeler Road sidewalk along with the Tilly Mill sidewalk under construction. Also the Spalding at Chamberley, Dunwoody intersection curb is going in. If you haven't had the opportunity to drive by there, please do, so you can take a look at the construction. That project's moving along very smoothly. The Old Village Mill Run sidewalk, we had our pre-construction meeting with the contractor for that today, so that can begin very soon. Also, the annual stormwater utility report was submitted to the Georgia EPD last week, and also maintenance crews. I know some of the council members were asking during the potential for ice, kind of what's our protocol, and I wanted the public to know as well. On the condition of on the night of the 15th of February, we had crews on standby just because of the potential for ice, just so people know that we are always ready if there is an event of that type. Of course, each event is different and somewhat unpredictable, but we do have crews ready when that occurs. In the police department, the police, as we know, a few weeks ago, have our new K9 that have started, and we've been able to use those a few times just to help track, and those will be a good resource in years to come. Also, our SWAT team was called out to assist with Sandy Springs and with Johns Creek. And as you know, and the public, for their information, we do have a joint SWAT team and with Sandy Springs and Johns Creek and Brookhaven and Dunwoody, and we share resources there. And so when we're called out, we all respond jointly on that. Also, we've been working with some mailbox thefts, package thefts, doing a few operations there. In the police department, we have the city on last Friday celebrated Georgia Arbor Day with a ceremonial planning at Pernishaw Park. Community development, 193 building inspections over the past 2 weeks and 68 new permits. Code enforcement is also out working with inspecting for any delinquent business licenses, just to remind people it's time you have to pay your occupational tax. And also we're working with the vacant properties to inspect those on a regular basis. There's some other departments in here that I won't hit right this minute, but I did want to hit also communications and our Dunwoody Ambassador Program, having a total of 70 volunteers have signed up. Kathy Florence will serve as our program lead on that new project. Finance is working on the final year-end closeout paperwork for 2020. And then municipal court is still operating very efficiently, disposed of 89 cases in the past 2 weeks. So once again, Mayor, I have submitted that to the council. I'll be glad to answer any questions for that report.
Anyone have questions? I have a quick one about the sidewalks in Village Mill. Did we interact with the neighbors, the people that are having the sidewalk come in their yard?
Yes, that's always part of our program, is to work closely with the neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime that we're doing a project, and we try to pride ourselves on that information.
And when are we breaking ground?
Well, we just had the pre-construction meeting, so I would say in the next 60 days,
Oh, so the pre-construction meeting is when people put in their bids? No.
No, it is, right. The pre-construction is the bids are already in.
Right.
And it's getting ready to begin.
Okay.
And so they're getting ready to
Next 60
mobilize.
days.
And it'll probably be quicker than that, but just based on weather and mobilization, they'll be getting very soon.
And I should have thought to ask this when Michael was still around, but because traffic is still light, even if when the kids go back to school, are we looking at moving paving up some, or we don't know yet? 'Cause it's still-
Right. The good is, the contract's ready to go. And as soon as the weather permits, we can move that up. Last year, I believe it was last year, we were very advanced on the amount of paving we got done on the first half of the year, or the first half of the paving year, I should.
Right. Just before the weeks go back to whatever normal.
Yes, ma'am.
Perhaps. Anybody else have questions? Joe?
Yeah, on the community development, Eric, can you note in the next one about the sustainability plan? I guess it falls under community development.
It does. That's correct. Sure.
That's in flight, right? And they're going to be presenting something eventually to council in the short term.
Yes. We can get an update on that. Absolutely. We can get that.
Right. Are there any other, so under community development, I just seeing this report. So that's the, they'll be under upcoming activities. Are there anything else that we don't have any plans in flight at the moment under community development? We're just working.
Our sign code is something we're looking at there. And then, but no, the rest of the stuff is pretty up to date.
Okay, great. Are you going to hit the also the financial update, or is you going to hit that one, or?
No, I wasn't going to hit that. That's just really for y'all's review and just to have that. That's the monthly report. And so I wasn't going to go over that.
Okay. All right. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Council comment. Anybody have anything? Jim?
So Michael Smith, our Director of Public Works, had a good meeting with Georgia Power. There had been a number of concerns about power reliability in various parts of the city. And I guess my quick summary and paraphrase of his excellent email report was that most of it's due to tree fall, and that kind of jived with what Public Works has seen from the standpoint of having to remove trees from the street, that we've had more than normal this year. And we've also had just a good number of frying themselves and taking, parts of neighborhoods out. And that's really most of it right there. There's really nothing wrong or bad with Georgia Power systems out there. We've just had a lot of tree fall and a lot of squirrels getting into the works.
Yeah, thank you. Just one quick update based on what we were talking about speed limits. I just want to remind everybody that the speed limits are the legal speed limit. And when people go above the speed limit, they're breaking the law. And lowering the speed limits doesn't really affect change without enforcement. So again, policy, we set the policy for how much money are we putting towards speed enforcement. So sometimes we got to look at ourselves when it comes to these types of things. And if somebody has complaints regarding any certain street, our police chief is here, and we need to do a better job sometimes on making sure that our police force is doing that due diligence too. So speed limit signs mean nothing to those who don't want to follow them.
Joe, do you have anything?
I'll just reserve the speed limit conversation to the retreat. Thank you.
Me. So thank everyone for their diligence. We're very fortunate that we didn't have winter storms. Often it's your neighbors driving fast, and a neighborhood discussion can sometimes help with that. I have been selected as one to participate in an arts leader of Metro Atlanta ARC workshop. It's a project-based workshop starting mid-March. I'm very excited as we begin our public art journey. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Moved by Jim, second by Pam. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You have to stay here all night. Seeing none, it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Good night.